Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome to the program. It is March 25th, 2025. And here we are. The last podcast of the rest of the second to last podcast before the Nintendo Switch thing. Where they say, here's a Mario Kart. I think that's how here's a Mario Kart. I think that Mario's going to host this one. He's going to say, I'm a-coming really soon. And then announce that the thing's coming out in June. And that seems to be where everyone's landing on it, is this June date, which I think makes a lot of sense. When you think about the other games Nintendo does not have announced for this calendar year and why there's a big hole in it, you're like, yeah, there's kind of a, yeah, they probably need to announce some stuff, don't they? So yeah, I don't know. We're right around the corner from that, which is kind of neat. And some news, some confusing news this morning around like the release cadence and scheduling around some of that stuff that I have read like 4 times now and just been like, I don't understand this. I don't know why this would be the way that anyone would do anything, and especially the way it is written here. It's like sometimes you hear these news stories come along that they're based on sources. They're based on like, hey, in this case, I think it's like some people heard some stuff at GDC, right? And so it's always the situation of like, well, it feels like a story with something missing, where you're just like, there's a hole here that I feel like that we don't necessarily know the full story even based on these leaks. But we'll see how it all goes. I have been playing some video games. I don't know. Assassin's Creed Shadows does the thing where there's really not that much distance between you and the next big story point, but there's a ton of side stuff. So like they do the thing of like, we're going to let you out into the open world and there's going to be a bunch of side things and all this other stuff, and you could spend hours and hours and hours not doing the thing that brings the main story along. And that's kind of where I've been at with it, is out there kind of doing some of these cool side quests, and that stuff's been fun in its own right. So it doesn't feel like the Ghost of Tsushima problem as an open world game was, I spent a ton of time doing everything in the first area. And then you get to like the rest of the game and you're like, oh man, I'm fucking so done with it. Like you see the same concepts kind of rubber stamped around the world, and that's not good. That's I think, obviously, right? When you can say words like rubber stamped about anything in a video game, I think that's probably usually a bad thing. But Ghost of Tsushima kind of fell into that trap a little bit, where it was like, oh, I kind of did all this stuff a few times already, and I don't especially want to do any more of it. So I think in that game, I kind of got through, like that first third or whatever, and then just mainline the rest of it. I was just like, I'm done with this. They have broken me of the open world sickness that I suffered from in the early parts of this game. And Shadows, I think is not quite like that in terms of seeing the same content over and over again. Like it's not quite to that level for sure. But it is still, an open world game. But we get fewer of those now. I don't know. That's kind of the underlying message, I think, as we have more of these games, and Assassins is like this a little bit, but I think it kind of undercuts it to refer to it this way. But we've had a few games recently over the last 6 months or whatever that I think, not just me, but I've seen people describe as like, oh, it's like a modern PlayStation 2 game. It's not necessarily the grandest scope It looks good, you know. It doesn't look like a PS2 game per se, but it's that feeling of like, oh man, like, you know, this style of big game doesn't really get made anymore, and it's cool to see it back. And it is generally the vibe behind, I think, a lot of the when people call a game, when people refer to a game as a PS2 game, in a not negative way, right? And I think some of that is like, it's a weird. I'm feeling it a little bit, and I know I'm not alone on this. Like, there's a certain nostalgia for big games because they are becoming so few and far between. Like big even means something a little bit different now. Because I think games that would have just been like, you know, like 20 years ago would have come out and you would have been like, oh, cool, yeah, great. And this is a good game. It's a good, solid, you know, fans of the genre will like this game. You know, like now there are just not that many publishers publishing those types of games. And they are, again, like few and far between in a way that I think if you've been playing games for a long time, I've seen this sense of like, and I think it is like a nostalgic thing in a weird way, where like the biggest, most expensive games, like, because that's such a rare animal now, it's like, this makes me feel like the good old days when you used to go out and wait in line and pick up a game at midnight and do the blah blah blah, and we would drink all the Mountain Dews, and you know, like it's weird. It's just, there's, I don't know, there's just kind of like a weird vibe like that, I think, around a lot of big games as of late, because of just, well, you know, not because of really anything the games themselves are doing, but I think just because of the nature of video games as a business, as an industry, as a whatever, you know, like it just doesn't feel like we're getting nearly as many of those. And so I don't know, like there's this weird feeling of like, oh, I kind of want to savor this a little bit, you know, because they don't make them like this anymore. I mean, they do. They make them. They make a handful of them a year, but you know, it's not a world where they make one really good one and then other publishers between them make 20 that are not so good or like decent or whatever, right? It's not the days of 25 to Life or 187 Ride or Die or, you know, Saints Row 1 or 2, you know, the also ran crime simulators, the games that only exist because Grand Theft Auto came out and became a big deal, you know. In some ways we're probably better off without that kind of like glut of games that are, you know, like that are just cramming themselves into that genre, or any genre really. I'm trying to think what the last one of those was. I mean, you know, like obviously, like anytime a game is a breakout hit, you're going to see a lot of games that are, you know, copying it, or you know, maybe a nicer way of saying that is taking inspiration from a big hit. You know, that goes all the way back to what? I mean, Space Invaders, right? Like Pac-Man, you know, all of the maze games that came after that, you know, Doom, obviously. Yeah, almost as Overwatch. Is Overwatch the last one of those? Like, yeah, I guess. I mean, Overwatch is technically after the MOBA boom, right? I was going to say, you know, in a world where Heroes of New Earth and just like the 10 or 20 MOBAs that kind of came and went. Though I guess Heroes of New Earth is back from some free-to-play Chinese company or something. Yeah, PUBG is, you know, is it the battle royale thing? Is that the? I feel like extraction shooters like that's, you know, yeah, a lot of Lethal Company likes these days. You're right. Yeah, a lot, and that's something that I think a lot of smaller developers are getting into. Is that kind of like that co-op comedy horror whatever thing that is, like horror games all evolved. I was thinking about it the other day with a game like Evolve, that kind of 4v1 thing, like the Friday the 13th game was like that, right? There's a handful of other the game, the Meet Your Maker guys, the game that they made that was actually popular and not Meet Your Maker. What a Death by Degrees, the one where you eat the rats. No, what is that? I don't know. But that kind of asymmetrical multiplayer that is basically just Pac-Man versus blown up into a different format, where you've got, you know, one player with different information than the 4 players on the other team, or whatever it is. Like, you know, there was definitely a lot of those for a good long time, whether it was Evolve or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. It's the extraction shooter that seems to be the one that people keep trying to make happen, right? Like, you hear about all these games getting, you know, whether it's Marathon or whatever, and, you know, obviously Tarkov still exists and is popular in its own disgusting way. The Tarkov sickos out there, like, Escape from Tarkov happens so far off the grid from like other like polite video game society. Like, I just assume that the people that are playing Tarkov are just like just shitting their pants. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the Tarkov people are doing, but they're creepy. Like, you know, it's one of those games. It's not on Steam. It's not on the Epic Store, as far as I know. And it's just like, it's just happening somewhere else. And you're just like, ugh, what are the Tarkov people doing? Like, I don't know. They don't seem like safe people. I'm not going to the store with a Tarkov guy. Like, oh yeah, you drive. No, man. No. There's something grimy. And that's kind of, I don't know, that's cool. There's something kind of cool about, like, no, man, we're playing these grimy ass games off to the side. It's like, I don't know, that's kind of awesome. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting as we kind of come up on the, you know, we're just about on the cusp of, you know, a new platform being, you know, like, we're getting our next drop of Nintendo Switch 2 news, and, you know, the kind of mainstream video game industry charging forward to fill that hole with whatever they can, third party wise, you know, so they can make some money and stop laying people off for 6 months or whatever it is, 90 days. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting time right now, I think, on that front. We're coming out of GDC. Doesn't really seem like that there was like any massive leaks or huge stories out of GDC. I think, you know, hearing from people who went to the show, it sounds like it was what you thought it would be. You know, here's 9,000 different talks about AI sponsored by AI companies, and, you know, and a lot of people. I think the other story, the other like interesting story I heard coming out of that show is maybe, you know, not necessarily directly related to video game news, but it is that a lot of people from outside the US were like, I'm not going to the United States. Are you crazy? They're detaining people at the border for like weeks. What? No way. And they chose not to risk it. Which is not great. Which is not great for commerce, in a general sense. If that's the vibe your country is giving, that's probably bad, right? I would think so. But hey, who can say? But yeah, well, I don't know. It's a weird time. But again, we're about to kind of get like that next rush of big kind of high ticket video game news and announcements and stuff in a week and change here, or a week and a day, I guess, actually, right? It's the 2nd. Yeah, so next Wednesday will be the day that kind of snuck up on me a little bit, like, oh geez, you keep thinking like, oh, it's April, but anything that's early April, you go, oh shit, all right, it's April now. And so yeah, it's sort of that's the thing I'm always super bad at when it comes to keeping track of dates. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about another game for disgusting sickos. Oh, well, 2 games for disgusting sickos, really. Nubby's Number Factory and Psycho Patrol R. Absolutely filthy, disgusting video games. We'll be right back. These days, it seems like a lot of subscription services are just kind of hoping that you're, looking the other way. They can raise prices, and just charge you the new rate and hope that you don't notice. And like, what's the alternative? You're going to call them up and be on the phone for 45 minutes trying to figure out how to cancel this service? Like, no, who the heck has time for all of that? There's a better way. It's Rocket Money. Rocket Money is an app and a service. The app will do all kinds of cool bank stuff. You can connect up your credit cards and your bank accounts and everything, and it'll tell you about your spending habits. And, if you're trying to save money, you can kind of figure out how to set some money aside. And it'll let you know how you're doing towards those goals. It'll give you your free credit score, all that sort of stuff. And that's nice. That stuff works. But for me, hey, the idea of being able to tell them, hey, I don't want this anymore. Can you handle this? And they will go off and they will handle it. That's worth the premium subscription to Rocket Money alone, as far as I'm concerned. They were able to get out there and cancel some services that I wasn't able to. In fact, I was inspired to sign up for it while I was on the phone with my old internet company. And I was sitting there going like, well, I should really just, why am I doing, what am I doing here? What am I doing? And it's been really awesome. I told them, hey, all right, they told me, actually, they'll look at your spending and go like, hey, did you know you are paying like $300 and something a year for satellite radio service? And then I'm like, yeah, I guess I did, but it's not, that sucks. And they're like, hey, we think we can get you a lower rate. They will go off, they will negotiate. I don't know what they, you'll get some emails that'll say like, hey, we're checking into this, and they may hit you up for additional information or whatever along the way. But at the end of that process, they came back to me and they said, all right, cool, we knocked down your satellite radio bill by like $220. And I'm like, what? Oh, great. Awesome. Yes, this is good. Let's do this. Yes, I'm happy with this. And they can do that for you too. They can take a look at your bills. They can see if there's any companies that they look at. They know, these guys are charging too much. We can do better. And you can have them go out and do better. That's rad. It's really handy to be able to just kind of turn that process over to someone, because otherwise, what are you doing? You're calling up and you're going, I'm going to cancel this service, and they're going to go, but wait, what if we could keep you? What if they would, like when I was canceling the internet, they were like, well, what if we gave you the same bad internet you've got, but for like a third of the rate? And I'm like, well, in that case, I was like, no, absolutely not. I have faster, better, stronger internet now. I don't need it. And they're still calling me every single day. And they never leave a voicemail. It's crazy. They can take a look at your bills. They'll let you know what you got. They'll organize your spending for you, so like, oh, I'm spending a lot of money on dining, and so on. So you can kind of get an idea about where your money's going, which is handy. But also, yeah, they will go out there and they will try to negotiate better rates for you on expensive bills. They will, cancel stuff for you. It's really convenient. It's really cool. And yeah, it's a personal finance app. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. It's I'm on board. It worked for me. So go ahead, cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/JeffG today. That's rocketmoney.com/JeffG. rocketmoney.com/JeffG. Nubby's Number Factory is like Peggle for sickos. It's a sick Peggle for creeps. With a little bit of 2048 in there. It's like disgusting Peggle flash game. It's like 90s flash game Peggle. Like there's this there's a connective tissue between the two games I'm talking about today, between Nubby's Number Factory and Psycho Patrol R, insofar as Nubby's Number Factory reminded me ever so slightly of Cruelty Squad. It's not as far out. It's not as far out, but there's elements of the UI and elements of just the way that everything is kind of put together in it that is off in a way that is creepy. But ultimately, it's Peggle. But ultimately, it's fucking Peggle. And so the idea is you are shooting your nubbies down into the well, and it is bouncing around, and it is popping the numbers down to lower multiples, and you're getting those points. You need to get a certain number of points in order to proceed to the next board. And the idea is you need to do it in one shot. And so if you don't meet the minimum in one shot, you have to try again. And eventually you run out of lives. And when you run out of lives, the sun explodes. You earn money along the way, and you can use that money to buy perks, and there's a little bit of a Balatro. There's a little bit of Balatro happening there because you're buying these items that trigger based on different criteria. So it'll be like, oh, every time your ball bounces off the side, that will trigger, everything in slot 2, and whatever item you have in slot 2. That normally it only triggers after you hit, out of 15 pegs or whatever, will just trigger automatically or trigger twice or trigger. And so it becomes this thing of like, okay, I've got to stack this on top of this and try to figure out the math to get these things to constantly pop off all the time. And so you're kind of trying to, it's a run-based game ultimately, I suppose. And you are kind of trying to build this chain reaction of everything exploding and you getting 1 million points as you go. And the entire game has just a disgusting filth look to it that serves it well. I made the mistake. It was like right before my bedtime. I was like, I'm going to go to bed. I was like, I'm going to check out this Nubby's Number Factory here real quick just before I go to bed. And I was like, three rounds in, I'm like, this was a horrendous mistake. I have made a horrible mistake here doing this right here, right now. But, 50 or 60 rounds later, when I finally lost my first game, I was like, okay, fuck. All right, I gotta go to bed. It's very simple and very powerful because of its simplicity in a lot of ways, right? It's in some ways a math problem. It's sort of like Balatro, as you're trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the right way to kind of build these and use this Joker here and do this. Nubby's Number Factory has a very similar thing to it, where as you start to get a sense of what's possible and a sense of like, oh, well, okay, normally this thing that's going to give me quadruple points or whatever it is normally only triggers after I hit 15 balls, but I don't even have 15 balls in the well to hit. So if I get a perk that makes it so if I lose a ball in a second or less, then it automatically triggers whatever's in slot 7, and I put that in slot 7, and I do you end up with these kind of these ridiculous chain reactions as you kind of like test out your theories and see what works the best. That's really satisfying, but also relatively random, because it works in a way where every few rounds here you get a trip to the shop and you get to spend gold on more items, and so, or you get a new perk or whatever. And so it's not really the case where you can just like sit there and just like, well, I'm going to build the perfect strategy and build perfect loadout, and bing bang boom, here we are popping balls. You're just kind of like having to figure it out on the fly. Again, very straightforward, but extremely satisfying. Nubby's Number Factory, you should you should give it a look. A lot of people have been streaming it lately, and I guess I get it. It definitely has like a hot new thing vibe to it, I guess, but also like it's just good. I wouldn't. I think some people have certain expectations for games that get streamed a lot to be certain types of games, and I know I sometimes feel that way when it's like, oh, everyone is streaming this thing. It must be this. It must be that. Again, it's a pretty straightforward math problem in a lot of weird ways, but I guess you could break Balatro down, I think, the same way. It's a lot of fun. Psycho Patrol R came out. I got an email. I don't use my Steam wish list very often. Unless games get announced that I know that I will just forget about, and they will just come out, and like I maybe won't hear about them again because I don't follow enough sickos or whatever. But this was a case where like the email came in late at night in a way that I was like, oh, what the hell? Psycho Patrol R is now available in early access on Steam. This is the new game from Consumer Soft Products. It is the next game from the maker of Cruelty Squad. It is in early access. It kind of says as much, like, hey, there's a lot more. There's a full story in here, but there's and there's 10 areas, and there's this, and so on. But there's a lot more to go. Sounds like the plan is to be in early access for like another year or something. So, and like Cruelty Squad, yeah, it is kind of a disgusting immersive sim for lunatics. It looks, just has a grind, like it lets you know right at the title screen what the fuck it's all about, because the logo for Psycho Patrol R is fully rendered in 3D, and the first thing they do is move the camera off axis in a way that the logo just becomes a jumbled mess of shit, because they want to focus on the sick fucking mech. So it is a mech game. It's like an immersive sim, but shogo. That's technically true, I suppose. But yes, the idea is that, yeah, you are outfitting a V-Stalker, which is your mech, and going out into the world. You can freely get in and out of the mech if that's your desire. You have to buy armor, or you will die very quickly once you get out into the world. The minute you find another mech, it will just blow you the fuck up. You can walk around the station and talk to a lot of people, and there's a lot of very creatively written nonsense that characters will kind of spit back at you. But yeah, also, it is the first release in early access, and so I think that there's a lot of stuff in there. And I think the game, it's tempting to say the game benefits from its kind of, it's got a reputation, right? I mean, Cruelty Squad is a weird game. This, I think, benefits, it's in early access, and so sometimes it can be hard to tell, like, is this how it's supposed to be, or is it like this deliberately, or is this just because it's early access? I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. There are things about it that don't necessarily seem balanced or fun at the moment, but also just walking around and kind of getting the lines of dialogue out of these people and kind of seeing all of that nonsense. You're day trading stocks to, so you have enough money to buy fucking ammo, and like all this. The structure of it, it's not necessarily that the structure of it is strange. I think once you kind of spend enough time with it, and I have not gotten to this point yet, but it's what I suspect based on kind of how I felt about Cruelty Squad. It is inherently a very normal video game, the most normal video game, dressed up with a bunch of fucking ludicrous lines of dialogue and just the graphical style of it, and the kind of immersive sim style things you can do in there, and like all of the other stuff along the way. Psycho Patrol R is certain, it's in early access, and so I'm gonna say it's not on the level of Cruelty Squad right now, based on the time that I have spent with it. But also, again, it does feel like it has like a longer way to go before it kind of hits its stride or something. Like it's a very powerful like first pass early access thing where you go like, wow, this is that uncut shit that no one else is fucking even trying to fucking make anymore. No one is writing like this anymore, and if they are, they're not doing it as well. I think there's a real kind of try hard way to write your like, look at my weird thing. And a lot of people really fuck that up. And this feels like it is not that. This feels like it is a lot of great original thought, nonsense straight from the tap, pure the way you need it. That raw, uncut dope. And I think that goes a long way. Cruelty Squad, I would say the same thing about, it's $40, which is steep for what the game is right now. So I might say, unless you are like desperately like, I need to see what is happening next from the creator of Cruelty Squad, I might say hold off a little bit and kind of see, if it kind of hits a good midpoint somewhere over the next handful of months here with some updates and so on. But keep an eye on it. Don't let it go. That is my point to you, is like, if you think you might like this game, but you also are tempted to wait, just throw it on your Steam wish list or something, and remember to revisit it in like 6 months or something, and check in on it then. But it's pretty high powered stuff, and the mech is really fun. Like, you've got like a forward boost that is like ridiculously fast and smooth in a way that it almost shouldn't be, but that kind of, it's funny in its own way. And between that and all the lines of dialogue, like as you're fucking encountering people and shooting them and whatever else, like even the characters you aren't necessarily talking to, you're seeing dialogue from them in the upper left corner of the game. It's not voiced, so it's like you're kind of reading it as you're shooting, which is not always the easiest thing in the world, but yeah, it's just a lot of very entertaining writing, I think, for a specific type of... it's like the Xavier Renegade Angel of video games. Is that do you think that's a fair way to assess Cruelty Squad? Is that it's got that kind of feel to it of just like, oh, this is off. This is absolutely off in ways that are like tantalizing and sickening at the same time. Like Cruelty Squad, I think, kind of scratches a very similar itch. And I think that this is the next step in that. I think that this is, this is very much the same type of deal. It's just that the game isn't quite there yet. So again, I would probably say take a look at it. It's really cool. It's absolute nonsense. And it's, I hope that as it shapes up, that it gets to kind of the same place that Cruelty Squad eventually got to. It certainly has the potential to get there. It like immediately seems both very similar to and entirely different from Cruelty Squad, if that makes any sense. I think the nature of it as a mech game and the shoot, like all of that stuff is a really advanced, wild direction for all of this to go in. But then again, this game had a grappling hook that was part of, it's like your appendix, right? So it's, Psycho Patrol R. You should, at bare minimum, you should get a look at this thing, because you don't see a lot of stuff like this anymore, or ever. I guess. Like I said, if you strip apart the disparate elements of it and just say like, what is this video game? What is the story? What is this? Like, there's a relatively plain way to talk about, I think, even Cruelty Squad in a lot of ways, where you go like, well, it's an immersive sim and you do this and this, and it's got these kind of things. I think that this kind of is a similar descriptive thing, but I think the mech gives it a little bit more fast action, at least on your part. Like the enemies you're fighting aren't necessarily coming at you with the same tech that you are. You are faster than, but they just stand still and blow you up. So, you know, you gotta, I guess the lesson there is buy some armor. That's out now. Give it a look. Speaking of filthy, disgusting things happening in video games, Bam Margera, potentially the dirtiest skateboarder. No, I'm sure that can't possibly be true. There's a story going around. Video Games Chronicle has it, sourced from a podcast called The Nine Club. That Bam Margera will indeed appear in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 Plus 4. He was not on the list of skaters that they released kind of alongside the kind of full announcement for the game. You know, the thinking was that maybe Bam wanted too much money or something. But ultimately, who knows? It sounds like that the information got out, and then Tony Hawk, according to this skateboarding podcast, which all good information about Tony Hawk games leaks on skating podcasts of some kind. This didn't even come from Tony Hawk. It comes from someone named Roger Bagley, is a co-host of the Nine Club. He says, well, here's what happened. The game was already done. Tony called up Activision and was like, hey, we're putting Bam in the thing. And they were like, hey, we can't. He goes, no, you're going to do it. And basically made them fly Bam back out there to get body scanned and everything else to get him back in the game. This is not, as of this recording, as far as I know, not confirmed. Though someone did just say that some gameplay footage of the game showed up. I don't think Bam is in it unless chat is leaving that part out when they're talking about it. But so yeah, potentially they're going to body scan modern day Bam Margera and put him in there. You gotta scan modern day Bam Margera so you can have throwback Bam as an unlockable, the same way they did 80s Tony Hawk back in the day with the hair. That's good. If we take this at face value and assume that this is actually the case, that's good. I think that, Bam was a big part of Tony Hawk 3. I think that his presence will be felt less in Tony Hawk 4 than it would have been, but because they are, and we'll see what they keep and what they cut and whatever else, but like if Tony Hawk 4 is getting its full story mode replaced with classic mode, 2-minute goal, like all of that sort of stuff, then some of the stuff, like, they were inching in the direction of like Bam's specific take on skateboarding, which is to say shopping cart bullshit and whatever else. Like, there's like a smidge of that made its way into Tony Hawk 4. Obviously the games that come after that, when we get to Thug and Thug 2, are way more in that direction, right? So yeah, like I said, his presence will probably not be felt to the full degree in 4. If they are, kind of redoing that career mode and stuff, because there was some little bits and pieces in there, but good. Speaking as someone who played Tony Hawk 3 almost exclusively as Bam Margera, good. they should do that. So hopefully that's the case. We don't quite know. That's still unofficial, but like I said, If it's not an Instagram photo of a catering event, then it's a skateboarding podcast. So, this is where all the good Tony Hawk news comes from. And that game's out in July. So that's kind of late for them to be adding a character, I guess. Maybe not that late. But cool. I hope that is the case. I hope that turns out to be the case. Minecraft held an event over the weekend. They're getting ready to put this movie out pretty soon here, but this is more of the kind of Minecraft Live sort of hey, here's a look at, this used to be like a big like in-person event, and it's one of those things that they went like, oh, instead of that, we're going to do multiple of these a year, and they're just going to be streamed and whatever. And so they put on a show and talked about what's coming to Minecraft. One of the things they're kind of committing to is kind of more frequent game updates, which, Minecraft, sometimes Minecraft seems like the sort of thing that should be like updated all the time, because you go like, it's just a bunch of blocks. But like, I imagine that between the age of that code base and how long they've been supporting it, I'm sure that it is actually getting trickier all the time to update it, especially because they have largely committed to continuing to support the Java version of the game. Like there's the kind of modern Windows version, the Bedrock version that kind of shows up all over the place these days, and that's the version with Xbox Live achievements, and the version that kind of makes its way to other platforms and whatever, has the Realms stuff built in and whatever else. But then there's the fucking Java version, which is extensible in ways that the Bedrock version is not, but is also ridiculous. It's all ridiculous, I guess. I don't know. Like Minecraft, every time I return to Minecraft, as someone who has enjoyed, let's call it hundreds of hours of Minecraft, I am still like flabbergasted by how kind of weird Minecraft is in terms of how it supports additional content via mods, and also how the Java version is updatable. The way that you can kind of modify the Java version and the greater control you have over the modding there. I always found it really weird. They started showing the game off with ray tracing and tried to make a big deal about path traced lighting, which is something that you saw some path traced global illumination make its way into the Java version from modders. Like people were on Patreon selling packs and saying like, no, you're going to need another resource pack to update all the look of the blocks, but like this is going to add path traced lighting to this Java version of this game. No weird hardware required. And then they finally like added, full proper ray tracing support to the Bedrock version of the game, but then kind of didn't. Or like it only worked in certain worlds. It was like they tried to make a big deal about like RTX is coming. It's RTX on. Here's our screenshot of Minecraft with the words RTX on written in the corner, because we mean business. But then that was just in these weird resource packs that NVIDIA made themselves. It wasn't in the base game the same way. So it's like the way that Minecraft has updated and tried to keep up with the times is fucking bonkers on that front. It's just stuff you just look at and go like, why are you doing that this way? Why don't you do it like a normal fucking video game would do it? What the fuck is wrong with you? And I'm sure that there are technical reasons, but and some of that stuff has since been updated again to make it a little bit more normal, but it's just Minecraft has to be Minecraft, and they're going to be weird in their own way. So yeah, they have announced the next batch of things that will be coming to the game. And this includes a variety of new monsters and blocks, and you can have leaves that you can scatter on the ground, and it makes a crunchy leaf noise when you walk over it, and you can burn leaves in a furnace to make these crunchy leaves, and all that sort of stuff, right? And, like here's some new blocks, here's some new things to play around with, and some new functionality. But I think the big standout is they're referring to vibrant visuals. And vibrant visuals will be coming to the game. They have not given a specific date for when it will come to any version of Minecraft. They've also said that it's coming to compatible devices, which means that, some versions of the game might not, on smaller, slower platforms might not be able to handle it. But this is basically a full kind of graphical pass on the game, from the looks of things, updating a lot of the lighting and updating a lot of the way the game looks. It's new textures, it's directional lighting, updated shadows, volumetric fog, kind of some more bells and whistles that you would expect a modern game to have. And because of the block-based nature of Minecraft, it is a great showcase for those types of graphical effects, because you look at it and it becomes this weird, like, oh man, here's this crazy looking block world, but also all the lighting and everything around it is so advanced and bonkers that it ends up looking fucking awesome. It's such a great way to show some of those features. Like, it was one of the first ray tracing demos I saw that I was like, oh, okay, rad. Like, look at this. This is great. I can't wait to try this. And so that's why it was even more of a bummer when they rolled that stuff out in such a weird way. But yes, this is a pretty grand update. I would liken it based on, what I've seen of it so far and looking at some of the stuff they released. Like it is maybe a beefier visual update than, when World of Warcraft got rebuilt and they updated the visuals, and they, when some of these long running MMOs finally do the big graphical overhaul and you're like, oh, this does look nicer. Like, it doesn't look modern nice, but it does look way better than it did before. This kind of is pushing on that. Like, this does look modern nice in some ways. Especially, like updating the kind of resolution and textures of the blocks themselves. That's something that modders have been doing for a very long time. If you want to go download realistic texture packs for the blocks, like, there are people out there running full-on Patreons for those types of updates that you get, and you can plug into the Java version of the game. This vibrant visual stuff, they are saying that will also come to the Java version, but that will not happen day and date. That it will be something that happens after the fact. I wonder sometimes if they feel like, oh man, we sure did step in it when we committed to updating the Java version alongside this other more modern version of the game. We sure did take on a lot of fucked up work on an ancient code base by committing to doing all of this stuff. It's awesome that they're doing it, because there are plenty of people that still prefer the Java version because it's something that is, it is so much more moddable and extensible than the version that they have relatively locked down. You can still add texture packs and things to Bedrock Minecraft. There's still a lot of stuff you can do, but it does not feel as, as crazy open as downloading fucking Minecraft.jar or whatever. Man, I was subscribed to like 2 different Patreons, get one for lighting and one for a texture pack, and they were putting out updates to the texture pack like once a week or something, and just, yeah, and it looked great. It looked awesome in a world where, ray tracing didn't really exist in any other version of Minecraft. Like, it was real cool to see all of that stuff. And the version that they sell these days, or rather the it's on Game Pass. Both are on Game Pass. You can get Java Minecraft on Game Pass, which is another real weird thing when you think about it. But like, you can you can do all this stuff with it, but it is a much more kind of friendly experience. It's an experience where they are willing to sell you a lot of shit. You know, like they have added a lot of texture packs and updates and you know, different mods, a ton of mods for Bedrock Minecraft that they will sell you in the store. And they've set up a marketplace where the people who create these mods can, you know, get a cut, you know, get their cut of the money, and or rather get the money and Microsoft takes a cut, or, you know, how, I don't know how the split works for people who are creating Minecraft mods these days, but they do have a full-on marketplace in there where you can, you know, set up your stuff, and they'll run a server for you on there. You know, you can set up a server on Minecraft Realms, which takes a lot of the hassle out of, like, all right, man, we need to find a place to host this fucking Java app that we can all connect to, and it's not going to be my machine, you fuck ups, and you know, and whatever else. So, you know, they've made all that stuff much more accessible. Like, I think my understanding of the way it goes for kids that are getting into Minecraft these days is that they are just getting into the Bedrock version of Minecraft, unless unless they have the sickness, if they have the madness in them, and then they're like, no, we need to go deeper. We need to fucking be running Minecraft Java. We need to be installing these other fucking weirder mods. We need to do that, you know. And they're going down an even deeper rabbit hole and probably learning a lot about how computers work along the way, honestly. Like, that's, you know, that's good on them. Though one of the things I feel like that we should be teaching kids is don't fucking ever install Java onto a modern machine. Like, Jesus Christ, like, what are you trying to do? Why don't you just roll out the red carpet for some of the fucking worst fucking garbage malware? For the record, in the time I spent playing Minecraft Java, I did not get infected with anything fucked up. But also, for the love of God, it's 2025. We shouldn't need to be installing... You shouldn't be running random jars you downloaded off the internet. You shouldn't be, like, hooking up hot jar files and loading them up. It is not a best practice for keeping your computer secure, I guess I would say. But, you know, kids need to learn. And I think one of the best ways for kids to fucking learn how computers really work is to have a computer get completely fucking infected and then have to unfuck it, and then have to learn how to unfuck a computer. That's, you know, that's probably a great way to actually know how to do stuff, and you're incentivized to do it because you want to play good Minecraft, and so you always need to have the incentive there to unbreak the stuff that you break, and figure all that out. I'm trying to think. I don't think, you know, knock on wood or whatever, but like, I have encountered viruses in the wild over the years, but I don't think I've ever been infected with one. I had a friend who, his machine got infected. He was downloading some sketchy, I don't know if it was just like this supposedly pirate copy of Doom or whatever it was. But his shit got fucked, and we had to unfuck it. And I think in the process of unfucking it and formatting it and whatever else, I think he ended up reinfecting it again because it had spread to a different floppy disk or whatever, you know, whatever. Like, one of his backups had the virus on it still, and so, you know, it was just a circular process of doing that over and over again until we figured out what the fuck was actually going on. And yeah, I don't know. I encounter some virus stuff here and there. Windows Defender. So MAME can run a lot of different things these days. People think of MAME as just running arcade games and whatever, but MAME runs a ton of computers and the software on those computers and whatever else. And so there's a way to run Windows 3.1 somewhere in the mess of MAME, if you will. The images that they have for like the German version of Windows 3.1 if you unzip that ever, Windows Defender will go, no, dog, there's a DOS virus in here, and it completely locks the files down. and so I don't know if that's a false positive or if the MAME team just has dodgy copies of German Windows somewhere in their software set, and so as a result of collecting all of that stuff, now a lot of people have that. I mean, it's not going to do anything to a modern PC, generally speaking, hopefully, but yeah, that stuff keeps setting off my Windows Defender every time I mess with it, which I had to mess with a bunch of stuff recently to move a bunch of files around. And as I was moving them around, like one of the files would suddenly just be like, can't move it. This is not an archive. We don't know what the fuck this is. I mean, yeah, it says it's a zip file, but what the fuck is this? We don't know. But we just know you can't touch it. And I had to stare at it for a while and go, what the fuck is happening here? Before I realized, like, oh, it probably got flagged and now it's quarantined and now whatever else. So yeah. Anyway, they're updating Minecraft. And you know, they're committing to trying to update the game a little bit more frequently and bring more things to the game. They're calling them game drops. I'm tired of the term drop being used for something being released or coming out. Personally, it's 2025. It's long past. It's like it that whole thing went like mainstream and then some and whatever else. And, you know, I feel like it's been 20 years at least, right? Of people saying like, yo, man, when's your album going to drop? Like that, right? It's been a couple of decades of that, right? But yeah, they are thinking of drops as being like smaller updates, but perhaps more frequent updates, to kind of go along with the larger stuff they want to bring to the game. Which makes sense. Because I think Minecraft, all this many years in, you probably run the risk of Minecraft seeming stagnant. And so you probably want to have, just from a marketing, you know, whatever it is, like you want to have Minecraft's name on people's lips a little bit more frequently than it is these days. Which is not to say, I mean, plenty of people are just playing it, right? It's not like it's in danger of vanishing or anything like that. But you don't hear a lot about Minecraft in the news cycle, is my point. And so I think more frequent updates probably just keeps people, it refreshes it in people's minds. Like this definitely got me to reinstall Minecraft for the 11,000th time. And the Bedrock version, I don't want to go get Optifine. I don't have the patience to dick around with proper Minecraft at the moment. I just want to make a cool cave. I just want to make a sick cave. And I want to dig down. I want to find diamonds. I want to make a cave and I want to dig down and I want to find stuff. And if I can make it look better easily, I will happily do it. But, you know, so that's why I think the Vibrant Visuals update is actually extremely fucking exciting. Because I go like, yes, make base level Minecraft look better, man. So that people don't have to like mess around quite as much with it to get it looking, you know, like something kind of cool and kind of modern and whatever. Like I think that's a good thing. There's an interview. Ingela, oh man, the executive producer at Mojang, Ingela Garnay. There's no way I'm going to pronounce that correctly. I'm sorry. Anyway, they spoke with IGN, kind of, you know, in the context of, hey, there's all this new news out here and what have you, and they brought up the idea of like the game going free to play, or just like basically like even just kind of changing its business structure as well, and you know. And the response was like, monetization doesn't work in that way for us. It's the purchase of a game and then that's it. For us, it's important that our game is available to as many people as possible. And so I think that's a very core value, that it should be accessible for everyone. It's the best deal in the world. I kind of agree. You know, I think, you know, obviously the current version of Minecraft will happily sell you a ton of stuff, right? It has this large marketplace full of resource packs and textures and mods and whatever, right? So there's plenty of room for them to monetize after that purchase. But like, there's no reason, you know, like even people who bought it for whatever low price it was when Minecraft first came out, it was like $5. Was it $5? It was like Minecraft was not an expensive game when it first came out, and the people who bought it then are still, you know, even through all the corporate ownership changes and whatever else, like they still kind of got grandfathered into all of the other versions of the game. And so I don't know how much they're charging for it now, because it's on Game Pass these days, and so you could even get it that way. But which I think is another reason why they would not do it as free to play, because it's already kind of, you know, part of a Game Pass subscription, so they would probably rather have you just go that route with it. But yeah, you know, I don't know that Java Minecraft ever got above $20 before the Microsoft buyout, but anyway, yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. I think I think it's also really cool that they are continuing to update this. I wonder how many Skunkworks Minecraft 2 projects have existed inside of Mojang over the last, you know, whatever, 10 years, 20, however, 15 years. I guess it's more like 15, 16 years, something like that. I wonder how many times they've been like, not just, you know, not even necessarily like, hey, we've got to have a sequel or whatever, but more as there's a lot of cruft in here. This code base is ancient. There's a lot of shit that we're stacking pretty high on some pretty ancient technology. And, you know, the Bedrock version, you know, I'm sure winds back the clock on that by 5 years or whatever it is. But now even that version of the game feels like it's been around for quite a long time. And so, you know, and I couple that with some of the things that they talked about doing and didn't. Like there was that period of time there where they were going to bring ray tracing to the game well before they did, and that they were also going to bring it to the Xbox version of the game, which they accidentally turned on for like a weekend and then turned back off again, which is even more ridiculous. But I wonder, like, if they've like, oh, we're gonna take a small team and go off in the corner, and we're gonna try to imagine what a sequel to Minecraft would be. What would we build if we wanted to build around, you know, if we didn't want to have to continue to build on top of this code base, like if we wanted to modernize this thing for real, what would we do? Or I wonder if they even if they feel that'd be an interesting. I would love to talk to them at some point about that. Like, you know, how much do they feel the strain of their code base based on just kind of how old it is, versus like, okay, like if we started from scratch and rebuilt it again. And, you know, when I say Minecraft 2, I don't even necessarily mean like, I don't mean like, and this time it's Sphere, you know, nothing dumb like that. Like they're making fucking Minecraft, but it's like, what are the things that they cannot easily achieve in their existing engine that if they were building from the ground up, they could, you know, account for that right out of the gate and go, okay, cool. And actually solve for some of those issues at a low level. I wonder if there are things like that they've wanted to bring to the game that they, like, for whatever reason can't figure out how to put in there because of some tech limitation or whatever. Like, it seems like Minecraft is still like a very healthy business. Like, it doesn't, again, for as much as we don't really hear that much about it from a like players and whatever, you know, like it doesn't always enter those conversations. It is still one of the largest games in the world. I mean, this movie's coming out, right? That guy's Steve. I got confused. I thought that, you know, because like they would show him from a distance, and I was like, sometimes you'd see Jack Black, and sometimes you'd see the other Jason Momoa, and you'd be like, wait, what are they? Is it? Is it this? Is it the case that like they're outside the Minecraft world, and then when Jason Momoa goes into the Minecraft world, he turns into Jack Black? Because in my mind, that's how that works somehow, weirdly enough. That's the story that I've built in my mind. I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about it. Am I going to take the kids to see Minecraft the movie? No, probably not. Probably not. Because they're not interested in Minecraft. Like my daughter has friends who play Minecraft, and so she has asked about it, but every time she has seen it, she has been uninterested in it. I don't think she's ready to grasp the concept of first-person video games. My son was asking about it too, because I think it's just because she was, or I don't know how that happened, but I installed it on the Switch, and then he messed with it for like a couple of minutes, and same deal. He's 3. He's not really ready for first-person camera control. Using both analog sticks at the same time is not great. We got into the Bluey video game, which is on Game Pass. And I found that to actually be a pretty good game for where their skill levels are at right now with a controller. The Bluey game is very open-ended, I guess I would say. I don't know, like there's a bunch of stuff to collect across like 5 locations, and there's like little episodes that have you just kind of walk around the environments and interact with things, and once you're done, you'll unlock the ability to kind of spawn that interaction wherever you want. So if you want to play Keepy Uppy, or if you want to play freeze tag or something, like you can kind of just spawn that, and after you've done it as part of their kind of like storyline thing. Like it's a 3D world, like you're running on both axes and all that other stuff, but there's like 0 camera control in it, which is probably good. It leads to a few confusing moments where like my daughter was just like running up against a wall because there was an objective indicator that was telling her to run in that direction, and she was just like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, you have to walk out of the house. You need to walk up here and walk out and go around the other, and then she realized that, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then it clicked for her. She started knowing that sometimes she just needed to walk around and find a way to get up to where she wanted to go. And she ended up getting a lot of the collectibles and everything else. And it worked a lot better, because I think a lot of the kids' games that we've been playing lately have been trash, because it's been like Paw Patrol and the PJ Masks game, which is from the makers of the Paw Patrol game, and so it's the same level of fucking trash. Literally 200 collectible items per level in most of those games. 200 fucking dog bones to collect in every single level. Or gem. You're collecting gems in the PJ Masks game. Every level, 200 items. Plus 3 amulets to collect in the PJ Masks game per level. It's real dumb. But it's all on a track. It's all just like, you're just walking to the right and collecting this shit. It's not like they're hiding little bits and pieces of it, but not really. It's really low tier. It's low vibration gaming. It's really dumb shit. Speaking as someone who got all 200 bones on one of the levels, though, okay, so most of the games are 3D in nature. They don't really have camera control in them, but it is you kind of running around a larger environment and trying to do platforming in the 3D world, and it sucks. Paw Patrol on a Roll for PS4 is a 2D game. The PJ Masks game is also, which if you're not familiar, PJ Masks is 3 kids who have superpowers, and they put on their pajamas and they go out and fight crime at night. And that's pretty much it. One of them is Catboy. One of them is Gecko. And like all modern cartoons, Paw Patrol did this as well, and PJ Masks does it occasionally. They found a pivot point at some point where they're like, we're out of ideas and we need to come up with something else and frequently it is like, what if we could be bigger, crazier, more super versions of these characters, or fuck it, dinosaurs, or whatever. And so Paw Patrol goes off in like because Paw Patrol was so successful, it had the opportunity over the 12 seasons or whatever the fuck they've had to go off in multiple of these directions, where like at some point they became the Mighty Pups because they found a meteorite that made them have superpowers. And then eventually it was like, I don't know, we got super vehicles, we got crazier cars. It's basically the Skylanders progression, but whatever. So like there's this Spider-Man series. I think it's still on. I don't think it's over, but like the Spidey and his amazing friends. And it's like, it's Spider-Man. It's Miles Morales, who goes by Spin because they couldn't just call him Spider-Man because kids would get fucking confused. And it's Ghost Spider, which is Gwen Stacy, I guess. It's fine. It's totally okay. Like, you know, my son dug it. He's a little less into it. He's not actively watching it these days, but it made him a fan of Spider-Man. To the point where we're bed shopping, and I'm probably going to get him some kind of Spider-Man bed for his first real bed. Anyway, long story short, long story long, they hit a point even in this fucking Spider-Man series. They eventually got to the point where they're like, dude, what if we had Spider-Man, and what if we had all these guys turn into dinosaurs? And so it's like Spider-Man, but a dinosaur. Is like, what? What? Like, it's real, you know, in the pantheon of shit they've had Spider-Man do over the decades. It's a real, like, oh man, you just want to sell some fucking cool dinosaur toys. I get it. It was just like a weird thing to encounter over the course of this run of this cartoon. There's a similar, like, there was a Mickey Mouse cartoon that started out as all like car racing. It was all like Mario Kart looking go-kart races or whatever else. And so for the first couple of seasons of that, it's all like racing adventures and whatever else. And then at some point they realized, like, dude, it's really hard to write another season of television where these fuckers just drive cars. Can we have them do something? And they changed the name of the show and they did all this other stuff to figure out a way to like take them out of the car and do all this, you know, and figure out, like, you know, a new gear for the show to move in. It's weird to watch the way this stuff works these days, because I don't know that the cartoons when I was a kid had to do that. There would be new characters introduced because new toys would get introduced, right? You'd have like, oh, well, now these other Transformers are like, well, I mean, I guess Transformers actually literally does their own version of it where they're just like, I don't know, here's Grimlock. He turns into a dinosaur. And you're like, what? No, these turns into cars and jets. So you're like, not this fucking guy. This guy turns into a fucking dinosaur. And then eventually they got to, yeah, I guess they did it in a couple of different ways, because then eventually they got to Transformers Beast Wars, which is dog shit. Sorry if you were a kid when Beast Wars was on. Like, they fooled you. They presented straight trash to you. And basically everything after that was fucking terrible too. They're like, you know, we just, and I don't, you know, not to talk about the nanny state. At some point, they decided that Megatron was not going to turn into a fucking gun. Once they decided that Megatron was going to turn into a fucking tank, or whatever the fuck, you know, like, you know, once they decided that Optimus Prime was going to turn into a fucking gorilla, because it's Optimus Primal, like, just fuck you. That's so fucking dumb. That's so fucking lame. Megatron was a literal fucking pistol, man. And then they decided to make him a tank when they brought him back, you know, because they, like, obviously he was dead. He did this, yeah. I tried watching Beast Wars again, like, relatively recently. Holy shit, fuck Beast Wars. Holy shit, it's bad. The Nintendo Switch 2. We'll know more next week. But there's a story here from Tom Henderson talking about some of the launch plan or some of the rollout as to how and when games will come along. That strikes me as just like this. As I've read this 3 or 4 times now, this does not make sense to me. The way he's describing it is that they will launch software in a 3-phase strategy. So how this will effectively work, or what the 3 phases will be, is that when the system rolls out in June, the games on sale will primarily be first-party games. And then there will be a second stage of games that will arrive in October through November. And that will be when the third-party games are coming out. He notes here that most third-party studios are expecting dev kits for the Switch 2 to be sent in June, which would imply that they don't currently have them now. But that doesn't... I don't think that's the case. I mean, there are certainly some developers out there that do not have... There are certainly some developers out there that will want to make Switch 2 games that do not currently have dev kits for one reason or another. You know, they can only disclose to so many partners, so many third-party companies over I'm sure they've been going crazy, going all over the world telling people about Switch 2 for a very long time and getting them all to sign the NDAs and getting all that stuff. Like, obviously, third parties have been working on Switch 2 games for some time. You can do a lot of that work without a dev kit. And so I'm basically like, I'm trying to figure out like, what the fuck are they saying here? And what is the actual thing here? Because I like, if they're saying, hey, we're not going to have final dev kits ready for anybody until June, and you're expected to be able to ship in October, November, that seems tight. So it may be that, like, third parties, the biggest third parties, the larger third parties with like favored nation status or whatever, that were read in on the console in the first wave of disclosure or whatever, that they will be the companies that will have this kind of early, because he says primarily first party games at launch, which would imply that there would be some third party games available right at launch. And so maybe it's the case that they just have not made dev kits widely available. Because remember, when we talk about dev kits and developers and everything, it's a very wide, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of single developers. It's a lot of, like, go look at the eShop and go look at the companies that are publishing games on the eShop and self-publishing and all that stuff is done. There's no way in the world that every single one of those developers has a dev kit who wants one. So it may be the case that, developers that are smaller, I don't want to say less important, but, like the kind of smaller devs that you would not maybe even trust to have this information prior to release, that you maybe would not ship them a dev kit until everything is publicly known and available and whatever else. So that's, again, I'm trying to read between the lines here and I'm speculating for sure, but I'm guessing that that's what that means, right? And so you would have a second wave of dev kits, a second wave of games that would arrive in the October to November timeframe, and that a lot of that would be third-party stuff. And then there would be a third wave of games in the holiday period, which, if the second stage is October, November, that's when all the games for holiday are coming out. So, like you want your game out and on shelves. Even in these kind of, things are a little bit different these days. It ain't like it used to be with all this packaged goods and all this other software, but you still generally kind of want your game out before Black Friday, when gift shopping is being done and whatever else. But maybe this third wave is like, hey, this is a lot of stuff that would end up being like digital only. And so, like, someone who got a system for Christmas would log on to the eShop and spend a gift card there. And so they want a wave of games that hits around that time. Again, I'm trying to, like, I'm trying to read what is a relatively short report here, and try to figure out what it means. So I am adding a lot of speculation to what is a relatively straightforward couple of paragraphs here. And yeah, they're gonna show that thing off next week, and so expect to see that type of coverage that goes alongside that stuff. They're gonna have some people get their hands on the system and report on some of that stuff, I think, too. So there'll be some of that happening. We'll see if pre-orders open immediately. I don't know. They've talked about, like, hey, we have some ideas in place to prevent scalping and whatever else. And, usually I feel like the best anti-scalping techniques either don't work or are not implemented in the US. It's usually stuff for like, oh, in Japan, we figured out a way to do this and this and this. Stuff they could really only get away with in Japan. So we'll see. I don't know. Like, I don't know when pre-orders would start, if they're going to start them as soon as the second, or if they're going to say, hey, we're going to launch pre-orders later in April and whatever. I would expect we would see the price at this point. That would make sense. It's potentially very exciting. I don't know, man. Like, this is probably, this is obviously not probably. This is going to be one of the most consequential directs that Nintendo has done perhaps ever, but certainly since they let people get their hands on the Switch for the first time and showed what that thing was and all of that. And I'm very curious to see what they have to say about it and what they have to show about their software. And how it interacts with the hardware, like what sort of mouse thing are they going to, what game will they use to say, check out this mouse? Will they have a specific game, be it a Mario Paint, or if it is some kind of Metroid Prime 4 may end up actually being a really good case for that because it's a first person shooter and they can go check this shit out. Yeah, what is the snipper clips of the modern generation? Exactly. It's a great point. And what game will they use to kind of show off the functionality of that? And how will that all work? And how much time are they going to devote to third party? And yeah, I don't know. Like, is this all going to be release day one games? Or are they going to show, like, if they're really committing to this kind of 3-wave strategy of software releases, are they just going to talk about day one games here, and then they'll have time to talk about the stuff that's coming later in a month or something? How much time do they spend on things that'll be out a little bit later in the year? I wonder. I figure, like they launch with like a Metroid? I mean, clearly they'll launch with Mario Kart. Do they do anything else with Zelda? Like, what other heavy hitter would they, I don't think Mario Kart necessarily counts as like the heavy hitter Mario. Like, it certainly is from a sales perspective, but I think, conceptually, hearts and minds, whatever, like a 3D Mario is really more of the showcase. Yeah, Red Steel 3, exactly. Like, what do you... Arms 2. Yeah, right. Animal Crossing was something that I thought of because of specifically how big of a hit Animal Crossing was during the pandemic, that would have been right around the right time frame for them to go, oh shit, we should really make another one of these. And also that game not getting as many updates as maybe people wanted it to get, that maybe those could all be signs that they bailed on that game in order to immediately start work on a new one. A mouse would make some of the building and layout stuff. Like, I hope that whatever they do with Animal Crossing, they ditch pretty much everything about the island style thing they did before and go back to a little bit more of a traditional Animal Crossing setting. But But I was going to say, you know, like a mouse or a Joy-Con turned into a mouse might actually be really handy for plopping down decorations in your house or outside. Like if you're just like, oh, I'm going to pick up this chair and move it over here. Click, click. And I want this campfire to be here instead of here, or, you know, whatever it is. I wonder if that would be something that they would do. Yeah, Mario Maker would potentially benefit from proper mouse controls, but I refuse to have faith in the idea of there being another Mario Maker for a couple of reasons. One, because I've been hurt before. Two, because when I look at Mario Maker 2, and again, like the level of support that game got, even compared to the first Mario Maker, like, I'm not going to say it was like a cut and run situation, but like it felt like they left a lot of ideas, or it just felt like there was a lot left on the table that, you know, a game that was properly supported would have gotten X, Y, and Z in addition to the things that they did do for Mario Maker 2. And them not doing it. Unlike the Animal Crossing situation, enough time has passed that them not doing it doesn't lead me to think like, oh, they're going to go all in on Mario Maker 3. Instead, it's more like, we've hit the wall. We're good on this. All right, moving on. And that we will never see anything like that ever again. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. But also, like, I at the same time, I don't, you know, hey, maybe they do a Mario 64 maker. Maybe they just go license that ROM hack that does all that stuff. No, they would not be able to do that. But if they did a 3D Mario maker, that's an incredibly different thing. And that's potentially really cool, but again, not the same. Not the like the complexity of building that out would be, I think, a lot harder for people to wrap their minds around, and just a little less satisfying in some ways. I don't know. You could do a lot of cool stuff, I guess, but yeah. Smash Brothers, yeah. Someone sent in an email about Smash Brothers, so we'll get to that. Also from Insider Gaming, they've got a story just kind of taking note that a domain registration was noticed for p4re.jp, which is, if you remember when the Persona 3 remake was coming out, they registered p3re.jp. And so that domain was registered. Well, you know, obviously domain registrations are kept private these days, which is nice and handy. And so we don't necessarily know who registered that domain. Maybe I did. Maybe I registered it. But that could be a sign that a Persona 4 remake could be headed our way at some point. That would be kind of weird considering Golden, you know, they kind of already did it. But you know, Persona 4 is a very popular game, and so, you know, a remake that appeared on another round of platforms would probably be well received, if nothing else, even if it doesn't necessarily need it. But, you know, yeah, if they were to do what they did with Persona 3 Reload for Persona 4, that that holds some appeal, I suppose. I mean, it is the best one of those they made, right? So why not? One of the things that happened during GDC was a screenshot was posted and removed, or an image, I suppose. An image of a screenshot. An image that included a screenshot. How about that? Maybe that's the best way to categorize this. Microsoft ran a panel called Opening a Billion Doors with Xbox. Or, I'm sorry, they put up a blog post. they put up a blog post. They did meet with a lot of developers and all this other stuff, and they had a presence there at GDC that was around this idea of like, hey man, develop for Xbox and it's deployable everywhere. Like, you know, the kind of hey, you know, everything is an Xbox, so make it for here and then put it everywhere, and you know, all of that stuff. Obviously there's a lot of things happening at Xbox and at the larger at Microsoft outside of the Xbox division around different ideas about bringing gaming together in a new kind of format. We've heard at length different rumors about the future of Xbox hardware, you know, being another premium console as well as a handheld. Obviously they're continuing to be a multi-platform publisher, the largest multi-platform publisher going currently. We'll see if Take-Two takes it off them these days or this year, but there's a lot of different ideas, right, that have to kind of come together for all of this to work. And they need to spend more time kind of focusing on that sort of stuff. And so that's sort of the part of this blog post that is, you know, somewhat developer focused, around this idea of like, hey, we've got a multi-device ecosystem that is ready for you, and the kids love it. One of the things they say here is younger generations, including Gen Z and Gen Alpha, increasingly engage with games across multiple devices. Over half of these younger players regularly switch between platforms, expecting seamless gaming experiences similar to their interactions with services like Netflix and YouTube. Our data shows this multi-device player demographic now constitutes 1/3 of all gamers, but accounts for 2/3 of spending, highlighting their importance for future growth. And then they go on to talk about like how we at Xbox are making it real, you know, and how they are poised to benefit here, right? This past year has been a particularly productive one for us here at Xbox. We updated our hardware offerings, significantly improved the Xbox PC app, and forged new partnerships with industry leaders such as Samsung, LG, and Fire TV, extending Xbox's presence to even more screens worldwide. To solidify our commitment to cross-platform integration, we launched the Stream Your Own Game service, which allows Game Pass Ultimate subscribers to purchase and stream games outside the existing Game Pass catalog across PCs, mobile, and smart TVs. This initiative has seen impressive adoption, particularly in Latin American markets such as Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, providing significant opportunities for developers to expand their audiences. One partner notably gained 1 million new players for an established game franchise through this service. Yes, they did improve the PC app, or they have been updating the PC app in a variety of ways. They've been updating their mobile offering. They've done away with the separate Game Pass app on iOS, I assume on Android as well, but they've kind of unified all of that into one app. The stuff on the PC side is a little bit more tightly integrated together, I guess I would say. Like, I don't know. The PC Xbox app, I don't know, I would say has been dramatically changed. The big rollout they had was their compact mode, and that's stuff that they're doing. I think that's happening along the way to this idea of the Xbox app maybe being your dashboard for a handheld device, whether that's a, you know, whatever Windows-based handheld device, whether it's their own Xbox branded one or, you know, someone else's, that they will eventually get there with that stuff. So the thing here is that originally this story had an image in it that they have since removed. And that image is of presumably an even newer version of the Xbox app. And potentially even something that we may see on a console someday if we want to make assumptions about, you know, if they're heading in this direction where they're saying everyone expects to be able to move from screen to screen and pick up their experience, and the kids, they want this, then it would behoove them to make consoles that could also be part of this multi-device experience at the deepest level, right? Anyway, the screenshot is actually not that much to write home about, but it is actually the crux of this story. It looks like a version of the My Games and Apps page on a current Xbox with a bunch of different tabs for you to choose from, such as recently added, installed, owned, Game Pass. These are all filters you can apply to your game library on an Xbox today. There's like stuff that they'll show you all the Game Pass games that you've played or installed or whatever, games that you literally own copies of, games that are currently installed, games that have been recently added to the certain whatever. And then the next tab on here just says Steam. So that's gotten a lot of people talking, and the image has since been removed. So at some point, Microsoft either went like, oh shit, or they went like, aha, they noticed, good, and pulled it just the same to get people talking. This is not as weird as, this could just be concept art. This could just be something that someone knocked together to say, here's what this interface might look like. And clearly anything they do, especially if it is going to be running on Windows devices, anything they do has to involve integrating Steam. I don't mean in a way that is taking control of Steam. This is all possible today, by the way. There are plenty of programs that are not Steam that will load in your Steam library, show you what you have, show you what's installed, and let you launch it. It'll have to launch Steam first, but the GOG Galaxy, your friends at the Good Old Games, GOG Galaxy does this exact thing. Play Night, which is primarily for emulators, but also integrates modern games, does this exact thing. The Xbox app currently is incredibly aware of the Steam games you own and run, because it will tell people on your friends list things like, you are playing whatever game name. Like, it'll tell people, hey, you're playing MAME. Like, it is aware of Windows game-like applications, whether they are part of Steam or not. And they will surface that to your Xbox friends list in a way that would have seemed insane 20 years ago. 10 years ago. 5 years. No, they've been doing it probably for about 5 years at least. And so if you're signed into Windows and all of that stuff, it will present that information to people right now. So there's already a certain level of Steam integration that exists within the Xbox app. It's just not telling you, here's all the games you have installed and all of this other stuff. But again, that's functionality that exists in other places. Could Valve try to shut it down? Maybe. It's certainly possible. Because I don't think because some of the GOG Galaxy integrations are not official. They have some that were officially sanctioned by whatever service provider, whether that's, Ubisoft or EA or whatever, like basically any of these other subscription services or services, storefronts that you might own games. Some of those integrations are official and made by GOG, and some of them are community run. And sometimes they break a little bit. So it ain't all ironed out to perfection. But again, the tools are there for that sort of stuff to exist. And I think that anything that Microsoft does in terms of trying to consoleize the Windows experience for people who want to play games has to include, at a bare minimum, Steam, but should really include Steam, Epic, I would say EA and Ubisoft. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. And just, the kind of random games you maybe have installed. Itch or something would be nice. Yes, the Riot Launcher. I guess the Riot Launcher is still a thing for a small but very popular number of games. Yeah, sure. Tarkov. Yeah, it's the larger kind of single, like separate install games. Like if you were to go download the Genshin Impact client directly from them instead of from a storefront, for example, it should be aware of that. Ideally. But again, at bare minimum, bare minimum, it needs to include Steam. And presumably would include Battle.net, because Battle.net is technically Microsoft. So If anything, they should be shutting down the Battle.net client or migrating everyone over to the Battle.net client. One or the other. One or the other. They don't need to have both. So, them pulling that down again, this is just kind of like bone stock, standard, obvious shit, right? You don't need to see a screenshot that says Steam on it to go, oh, I bet they do some kind of Steam integration. Whatever they're going to do to make a handheld Windows device work better, which they have stated multiple times they know they need to do. Obviously, that would include some kind of Steam something, right? Like you just kind of can't do it. Like if you've made a client that pops as soon as your device is turned on, and the best it can do is hand you off to big picture Steam. If all it's really good for is like, let me close this thing so I can open Steam, then you've wasted your time. It needs to have a deeper, better integration. And maybe Valve won't like that. Maybe Valve will have restrictions on how they want their stuff to be used. And I don't know if the last thing Microsoft probably wants to get into is some kind of cat and mouse game of they create an integration, Valve breaks it, they update it to fix it, they break it again. Like, that's not going to work for anybody. So you wonder, like, okay, well, what would Valve's terms be for something like that if they did indeed hold some kind of keys to that? I would say they would probably want their storefront information to be integrated into that flow, right? Like if you go to the store page inside of this app, it should show, here are the 5 places. It should be agnostic. It should say, hey, do you want to buy Indiana Jones? You can buy it from Microsoft. It's included as part of Game Pass here, by the way. You can buy it at Steam. You can buy it at Epic. Like list whatever integrations you've got logged in and connected to this thing. If the game is there, they should show it. That would be the fair way to do it, I guess, or the way that would at least like if they were just showing games for sale on their own storefront and you had to quit out and go to Steam to buy Steam games on such a device. That's not a great experience for anyone. And if they truly want to be this kind of open partner, this open platform with all of these things that they're calling Xboxes now, they kind of have to do that, right? Because imagine like, oh, it's gonna pull in the Steam games that you own, but like, we're not gonna let you buy more because we want you to buy them on our storefront. Like if they give their storefront like a solo, like this is the only way, unless you quit out of this, tab out of this, hook up a keyboard, alt tab, whatever, to break out of their version of that environment to launch big picture mode on Steam so that you can go buy a game on Steam. That's too many obstacles. They would have fucked it all up by then. I'm not saying this because I think they will do it. I'm saying this because I think they're smart enough to know they cannot do that. I would like to believe that they're smart enough to know they cannot do that. That they would need to, at bare minimum, integrate these other storefronts into the... And maybe you click that button and it tabs over to the Steam store page or something like that. I don't know what the flow there actually looks like. But yeah, it would be pointless of them to half step on this stuff. They're already making games and selling them on PlayStation. They're already, they've moved so far away from this kind of closed, kind of walled garden mentality on so many different things that the things that are still that way look like weird old legacy things. They need to go all the way down this road and not hold back at this point. I assume that that's what they're doing. Otherwise, why go at all? We'll see. Interesting little tidbit here that IGN picked up on a video from Laura Fryer, who was a vice president at WB Games, who was overseeing their Seattle studios, including Monolith. Had a video that kind of just briefly, kind of touched on the idea of where the Nemesis system came from Shadow of Mordor. I thought this was interesting because as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, of course, this is why they came up with this system, because of the time that game came out in and everything else. But it's something that I don't know that I've heard anyone really discuss in this way. But she says that the Nemesis system was put in place specifically as a counter for used games, as a counter for the idea of like people buy a game, they finish it in 15 hours, whatever it is, 12 hours, and then they return it. That the Nemesis system was deliberately an attempt to try to get you to stick with it longer, to make like, okay, we've got this, clockwork system that can generate infinite enemies. So hopefully players will play it for 100 hours and they won't sell it back and they will hang on to it. This lines up so perfectly with a lot of the stuff that Electronic Arts was doing at the time. And they are the company that is very much cited as the company that was at the forefront of trying to stop used games, with all of their Project $10 stuff, where they were literally selling online passes that if you wanted to play the game online, like, people don't remember this shit, man. This was fucking bananas. Like, games were coming with serial numbers, and if you were the first person to purchase it, you got the serial number and you could put it in and then you could play online. But if you bought it used, you would not get that serial number because it had already been used. And so you would have to pay $10 as like a DLC purchase in order to basically buy the online pass so that you could then play the game online. That was one of their attempts. And EA tried a variety of things. So, WB's version here of like, let's create a bunch of content that gets people to keep the game. That was the exact mentality that led to there being so much DLC for Burnout Paradise, and why that game had legs for as long as it did. Which obviously that's a little bit before Shadow of Mordor. But like, Burnout Paradise was another experiment along that same line of thinking of like, let's keep making shit. Let's put out a big new island. Let's do a bunch of new cars. Let's add this mode. Like, they kept getting to add more content to Burnout Paradise, specifically because it was a test bed for this idea of, hey, how can we get people to stop selling games back used? How can we get people to stop like burning through games in a weekend so that they can sell them back and get the most money back for them? How do we get them to hang on to a game longer so that like maybe by the time they go to sell it back, it's not worth as much and maybe they don't? How can we find a way to extract dollars from people who are buying used copies of our games? And the idea there, I don't know if this happened because it was such a long time ago, but like, I want to say the idea was in place to where if you were buying an EA game a used copy of an EA game or any game with an online pass, because a few other publishers kind of tried it, that the people at the register would be ready to sell you the online pass, that they would try to upsell you on it and be like, hey, if you want to play it online, we can sell you a code right here that will let you do it. I don't know if that actually happened, because I don't know if the upsell at the register online pass thing happened, or if it was just a like, haha, gotcha as soon as you get home. Yeah, Sony did some online passes. Mortal Kombat 9, I want to say, had an online pass. But maybe that was just like skins or something. Maybe that wasn't. I seem to remember it having one. But anyway, yeah, the idea was like, you would put the game in, try to log on, try to get online, and it would say, enter your online pass. If you don't have one, click here and we'll take you to the store and you can buy one for $10. And yeah. Japupu says, this discussion makes me want to go back to having games on discs. Dog, all of these games were on discs. These were all disc-based games. These were all, the whole point was you were buying a disc and bringing it home and then going, oh shit, I need to, if I want to play the rest of this game, I need to give them $10. Like, this was all, this was all their, because all of it was them trying to stop used games. Obviously, just a very different market for that stuff these days, right? You know, like it just feels like GameStops are getting shut down left and right. And the number of places where you can go to actually buy a used copy of a game just feels like it's shrinking all the time. You know, obviously digital sales are way up, and that's going to be a part of it, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like such a different world now for just selling games at all. There's a rumor going around. Half-Life 3. Or a Half-Life thing, which is even, okay. Something under the codename HLX has been showing up in various updates for games like Dota 2 and Counter-Strike 2 and whatever. So, you know, there's I'm not going to say a legion of people. It's more that there's a small number of people, but they are insane. And they are extremely dedicated to dissecting all of these patches and updates and digging through every single thing for like stuff that maybe is in there that doesn't necessarily apply to the game being patched, because as Valve patches the source engine, sometimes little bits and pieces find its way in there. This all comes from a video on a YouTube channel known as Gabe Follower, which is whatever. I don't like the way that the Valve fan community, or I guess like PC players, I don't like the way that they talk about Gabe Newell. It's creepy. They come off as weirdo. Like it just comes off fucking weird. Not that Gabe Newell is not worthy of whatever, you know, but the way, anyway, all right, whatever. Anyway, there have been a number of different things found in these code updates referring to something called HLX, as well as like different groups called HLX Audio, HLX Artists, and so on and so forth. According to WCCF Tech, there's also been some optimization work being done to these groups around NPC behavior and dynamic navigation and deformable props, dynamic hair systems, and more. And of course, that's it. There's no further indication. It's just that there is some code base, or some part of the source engine code base is currently devoted to something referred to as HLX. That's all we really know. And that stuff's being updated. And it's being updated in ways that you look at and go like, oh, this seems like that they're optimizing something. And then people are taking that and running with it as hard as they can to then go, oh, well, hey, yeah, they're optimizing because that means they're almost done. And clearly this is Half-Life 3. And clearly this means Half-Life 3 is going to be out real soon. So here we are again. All these years later, right back where we started. Sitting here, talking about Half-Life 3. Do you think that we will ever see a game called Half-Life 3? I know someone who was at Valve and got a demo of something that at the time was being referred to as Half-Life 3 back in the day. And it was a VR thing. You know, and they've since shipped a VR thing, and those two projects weren't even the same thing. So it obviously there's been, I think, some interesting... I think, you know, there's some of the stuff that Gabe Newell has said in you know, relatively recent you know, there was the bits going around of him saying like, yeah, maybe we absolutely could have just made it. Like we should have just made it, or, you know, like kind of realizing that maybe they were a little too precious about what Half-Life 3 needed to be at the time, and that maybe they could have just made it and moved on and not gotten so stuck on it the way that they did. When I think about some of the stuff that he's said, it makes me think that they will very much make a game and call it, they will very much make another Half-Life game, I guess. I think they could call it Half-Life 3. I think now at this point, and a lot of people in chat are saying it's too late, and I almost agree with you. But I think we've wrapped around. Like, they shipped Half-Life Alyx. They've been out there talking about, like, you know, the story for what Half-Life 3 was going to be completely leaked, and, you know, like, that stuff got put out there, and people were able to pick all of that apart. You know, there's been so many different pieces of the Half-Life 3 puzzle that people just know now, if they want it, if they want to know about it. You know, they can just go check it out. That I now think that, like, it's kind of, again, becoming the right time for them to just fucking do it. Assuming it is something that a team inside of Valve is passionate about. Like, that's always the thing, I think, for them especially, but for anyone looking to revisit a long dormant property, you need to have that passion for it. You need to have that, like, hey, we really, we need to have a good reason to make this. We need to have people who feel that they have to make it, that they are the ones that they can make it, and that they will make it, and whatever, right? And so I think that, like, now that we're on the other side of, yeah, the anniversary docs, you know, like, Danny went up there and made, and you know, Half-Life Alyx kind of came and went, and we're on the other side of even that, of the weird hope that surrounded that, where everyone was convinced, like, oh, well, Half-Life Alyx is of course coming to PlayStation VR 2, and people had convinced themselves that this is 1,000% the case. And that just still hasn't happened yet. I don't think it's going to. I think if you want to play Half-Life Alyx on a PlayStation VR 2, you hook that thing up to a PC. I think we're on the other side of so many of those things now that it almost feels like a little bit less pressure, because, you know, because of the things they've said, because of the time that's passed. Like, I think they could make a Half-Life 3 now, and it would not be, from my perspective, and I'm sure that there are people who are weird about Half-Life that probably would disagree, but I think we're at a point now where enough people have moved on. It's not this, like, daily, like, oh, they're gonna eventually make Half-Life. Like, there were fucking lunatics out there, like, keeping this candle lit for Half-Life 3 that didn't deserve it, that were, like, in their own subtle way, whether they realized it or not, creating a higher pressure situation. And, you know, that stuff's dissipated more and more as time has gone on. And I think that there's maybe room for them to just make a game and call it Half-Life 3. I don't know what that game needs to be. I don't know what that game should be anymore. I like, ideally, I think you look at it and go, like, it'd be really cool if they really moved things forward, because that's the perception of the Half-Life franchise. And I read, there's another side to that where, you know, there are people out there that look at, like, what Half-Life did in terms of storytelling, and they kind of clown on it a little bit and be like, yeah, this was a really awesome game that actually kind of moved games in the wrong direction. I look at that and go, like, I could see why someone would say that. As someone who never really, and maybe no maybes about it. This is coloring everything I have to say about Half-Life 3, is the part where I don't hold Half-Life in particularly high regard. I never did. Half-Life 1, I played Half-Life Deathmatch more than I played Half-Life 1, the campaign. The first third of Half-Life is really cool. And then everything after that, I'm like, nah. Take it or leave it, man. Half-Life 2, amazing moments in that campaign. I think my favorite Half-Life thing might be like, it might be episode 1 or, well, is it episode 1 or episode 2? It might be it's probably episode 1. Half-Life Deathmatch was really good until, like, you know, more mods came along and more other things were happening in shooters. But like, there was a moment there where like Half-Life Deathmatch was like the thing. And there's some great mods for, you know, multiplayer Half-Life at the time. Obviously, it was a furtive mod playground, right? You know, Counter-Strike and everything else. Like a ton of amazing mods came out of Half-Life 1. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that they should make Half-Life 3. I think they would probably be really good. You know, I don't know. Like, would it be amazing? Like, again, as someone who doesn't necessarily think that Half-Life 1 was an amazing game and Half-Life 2 is better, but like, Half-Life 2 has impressive technology things in it where you go, oh shit, that's really cool that I can do that with this saw blade. This gravity gun thing is neat. I would much rather see a Portal 3, I guess I would say. Story-wise, like, you know, or rather, what I think I would really see is the final merging of these two timelines, which it seemed like that was the thing that they wanted to do anyway. Like, there was a time there where it seemed obvious. You'd look at this stuff and go like, oh, well, shit, dude. Clearly, Gordon's going to have a portal gun in Half-Life 3 because of how he's going to find one. This is the whole thing. They're doing this and this. And then, you know, you started seeing pieces leak out that almost kind of supported some of that stuff in a way that was funny. But like, I think that Half-Life 3, again, I guess my point is I think they could get away with making Half-Life 3 now. I think that enough of the weird hype has subsided. I think people are like ever so slightly more normal about it now, like not to a full degree. They never will be. As long as people are out there dissecting patch updates and making videos like this, that, you know, clearly there are people out there who are not normal about a Half-Life sequel, and that's fine. It's fine. It's a seminal. It's like it's a landmark moment for video games. Like, I'm not going to deny that, but yeah, I think they could do it, and I think they should do it. If only because no one's making big shooter campaigns anymore. And it would be really interesting to see. Again, you know, we talked about earlier in the show, I was talking about this idea of like nostalgia kind of driving feelings towards modern big games because there just aren't as many modern big games as there used to be. Like, there's sort of an element of that to it. Like, what would a Half-Life sequel be now? What would a sequel to a first-person shooter? What would a big first-person shooter campaign on PC be now? You know, we still see some campaigns here and there, but they're usually saddled with a bunch of other tags, a bunch of other Steam tags, right? Like, hey, this one's a boomer shooter. Like, okay, leave me alone, weirdo. Get away from me. You know, you see the Doom games, obviously, and that's like kind of their updated and modern interpretation of what a shooter campaign can be. And I think that that's pretty cool. You know, even if Doom Eternal, you know, didn't really do it the way that it probably needed to be done, it's great that they still made that game after Doom, and you know, they're going to make another one. You know, they're going to do the Dark Ages here pretty soon. But there are not that many big shooter campaigns anymore that aren't like gimmicky in some weirdly specific way around like, we're making it old on purpose this time, you know, or whatever, like the kind of boomer shooter thing that, I don't know, doesn't really usually do that much for me. Sometimes, yes, there's some standouts. There's definitely been some cool games that use that moniker for sure, but yeah. Half-Life 3, they should do it. And then they should make Portal 3. They should do the actual thing and make Portal 3. The thing they should really do is make Portal 3, a sequel to Portal, because that would be great, probably, hopefully. I mean, hopefully they wouldn't make it and have it be bad, but like I would much rather see Portal 3 than Half-Life 3. A Portal 3, you know, like great puzzles, you know, you come up with another new mechanic. The stuff they added in Portal 2 mechanically, I thought was like fine. I think ultimately the problem Portal 2 had, which is, you know, a weird way to discuss it, because I think Portal 2 is still largely a very successful game. For me, it was, I've talked about it before, but for me, Portal 1 was, every time you finished a one of the kind of mid to late game areas in Portal 1, you came away from it feeling, I came away from it feeling like the smartest person who had ever lived. Like I had gotten one over on the game. Like I was like, yeah, I figured this shit out. I'm fucking awesome. They maybe they didn't mean for me to figure it out that way, but whatever. This was awesome. I did it. Portal 2 didn't. Portal 2, every time I've solved one of the puzzles in the mid to late game, I instead felt like the dumbest motherfucker alive. Like everything just took like 5 seconds longer than it should, you know, whatever it was. Like it was just like the way that those things were structured. It was more a thing of like, oh, I actually just missed this really obvious thing. Not like, oh, I figured out my own path through it. It was more just like I was anticipating something insane and the solution was way more simple and I was just a dumbass. And like the way that Portal 2 kind of expands on it, or the way the Portal 2 puzzles are designed, felt very different to me. But it's hilarious. Like the writing is great. Like, you know, there's obviously across both of those games there's great writing, and that's the real foundation of Portal is to have that, you know, those fun characters and good writing and everything else. Like I think that you know, they could come up with some fun new puzzle mechanics and make Portal 3. They don't have to reinvent the wheel to make it. And it'd be cool to see them expand on the co-op campaign stuff, which I only messed with a little bit, like when Portal 2 first came out, and screwed around with it a bit, but never really got super deep into it. But it always felt like really smartly done. It was like, oh wow, like a lot of time went into making this thing just perfect the way it needs to be in order for it to work at all, because it'd be so easy to fuck it up. But yeah, I don't know. I think there could be a Portal 3 would really be exciting. And then of course there are even more people who, you know, would love to see like a Left 4 Dead 3 after all this time. And I don't know. I guess like it feels like that there's so many other co-op shooters out there these days. What would a Left 4 Dead 3 have to bring to it to move that along? I mean, I guess you could argue that most of the games that have been coming out after Left 4 Dead 2 have not been as good as Left 4 Dead 2. Certainly not the ones that are like directly evocative of it. Like, but yeah, like Back 4 Blood. No one's playing Back 4 Blood and going, here it is. They finally did, you know, like, but yeah. More games about pills and where the pills are. Are they in fact here? Yes or no? That's what I want to see. And that's going to do it for the news. Yeah, all the important news. Bam Margera and Tony Hawk, you know, Half-Life news, all of the Minecraft, all of the hottest, latest video games. Bringing them to you. Yeah. I spent a good chunk of time over the last week completely rehosting all of my email and moving it to a different provider and combining multiple different accounts and all of this other stuff. And it was one of those things that you look at it and go, this could go wrong a billion different ways. but I'm proud to say I did it properly. podcast@guard.bike is the email address you can send your emails into. And I will read them. Okay, now I need to just show the pinned messages in here because that's different than the starring system I was using before, but here we go. Mark writes in and says, what do you think Ubisoft will do with Ghost Recon? I enjoyed the advanced warfighter games, so I'd like to see them get back to the formula of a game with a campaign and multiplayer, but I'm sure they'll just try a live service idea again, even after they canceled Frontline. Yeah. I think Graw was a great game in its era. I think that especially the achievement you got for hosting your own server on your own Xbox for 8 hours, which was funny because it was early enough in the Xbox 360's lifespan that we didn't really yet know about the red ring problem. And here was an achievement saying, leave your Xbox on for 8 hours, which was pretty great. But I got that achievement. Fuck it. I left my Xbox on overnight and I had to do it twice because it didn't ring up the first time. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Like if you look at the different forks, the different tendrils of the Clancyverse these days, like obviously Rainbow Six Siege is a huge thing for them and continues to be massive. It's a company saving product if I've ever seen one. And then you've got The Division, a game that is still getting some updates here and there, but like I would be very excited to play The Division 3, a proper sequel to The Division 2. I reinstalled The Division 2 as part of my playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. I reinstalled like 3 different fucking Tom Clancy games. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with me. I really enjoyed my time with The Division 2, but also didn't stick with it through all of the add-ons. Like by the time they got to their like whatever Gang New York, whatever the hell the actual DLC campaign thing was for the Division 2, like I'd kind of checked out of it. But I like that game. I like that game a lot. Like I played probably more Division 1 than Division 2, but I think those games are cool and would definitely be interested in playing a third one of them. That's not Ghost Recon, obviously, but if we just think about like what else is happening with Clancy, yeah, the X Defiant was a Tom Clancy game for a hot minute there before they kind of moved away from that. But yeah, what was the last Ghost? I mean, like Breakpoint is the last Ghost Recon game, right? Like that's the. Yeah, Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I think, so I think if you look at everything about Assassin's Creed Shadows and what they're doing with that type of open world game and the way that they have tried to update that formula, some of that stuff surfaced inside of Breakpoint. Some of those things made their way into Breakpoint. There's like a little bit of shared DNA. Like Ghost Recon Wildlands is the game that always comes to mind when I play Assassin's Creed Shadows because A, I'm broken, and B, there's a lot of weirdly specific stuff in there that just reminds me of freaking Wildlands. Wildlands is dumb. I went back and played a bunch of it. It's like a super fucking dumb game. It's like, it's fun to play with other people, but you're so overpowered when you're alone because the AI posse members they give you are just straight murderers. And so you do the sync shot and you can clear out bases silently because your 3 friends never miss. As long as you're careful about it. And it is a thing that kind of robs the game of some difficulty that it would have otherwise, but is also really fucking fun. And so I don't think a sequel to Breakpoint would be good. I think a lot of the things they did from Wildlands to Breakpoint were not positive changes. and they rolled back some of that stuff. Like Breakpoint just was a mess, man. Or the things they did to it over time, where they're like, oh, we're gonna strip out gear score and just make the guns. We're gonna add a whole different mode that gets rid of the gear score because people don't like that and they don't want to play it like it's Destiny. And so we're gonna strip this out in favor of this, and we're gonna, and there was just a lot of. It was weird because those were changes that like completely cut out like one of the game's core systems and left it with like less. And that's interesting because it just makes the guns guns, and so few video games are willing to just let the guns be guns, especially single player games. And so that was like a neat idea that I ended up not actually enjoying. Like I kind of went back to the gear score thing after a while because I'm like, actually, at least this gives me something else to do. Like it's another system to fuck around with while I'm playing in a game that I don't think was great either way. It's a real step down from Wildlands, I think. Story-wise too, with their fake Facebook company on an island and all this, it's just that whole thing just did not do it for me. But like, I don't know. I think, something that was a little more level based would always be fun as a throwback, but I just don't think that I don't think that the Ubisoft of today or yesterday is interested in making that type of more straightforward single player experience, or campaign experience, I should say, because they want an open world where they can drop in DLC guns and drop in another campaign add-on or this or that. They want that type of world. And those types of worlds can be fun. Like I don't necessarily mean to just like shit all over that conceptually, but the era in which Graw came out it's a dramatically different time, right? And so it's hard to envision anything that is a more traditional kind of campaign coming back to a Ghost Recon game these days. Not just because of the Ubisoft is chasing money. Like, yeah, of course they are. Everyone is. But like, just in where the industry is these days, like it just is not something that feels like something that anyone would really pursue on a large scale. These days, unless they're making like Call of Duty, and even then sometimes they bail on a campaign. But yeah, I don't know. I could go for like another. It's been long enough now, like we haven't really seen one of these games in this generation of consoles in a way that like I think Assassin's Creed Shadows looks astounding. I played some of the game on PC after playing a lot of it on PS5 Pro, and it was like night and day. I mean, you just look at the power of the parts involved and it's obvious why. I'm not like shocked by it, but I was in some ways surprised by how it kind of made the PS5 version look old by comparison. Which is to say, it looks fantastic on PC. Great looking water and snow effects and all. Like, it's a very great looking game that when it's running at a nice high frame rate really fucking sings, man. It's just a beautiful game, Assassin's Creed Shadows. I would like to see that engine and technology and what have you. I think, if you made a new Ghost Recon open world game, if you made Assassin's Creed Shadows but filled it full of a bunch of assault rifles and dudes in camo instead of samurais and ninjas, I think that would work. Like that style of open world game with a modern military setting or what have you. I mean, that's basically what they've been making all along, right? So yeah, I don't know. I think that, something maybe a little bit closer to Wildlands with maybe a little bit more of a balance around some of the sync shot style stuff that you can do. Or, have you go it alone so that you don't have guys taking shots for you or whatever. There's always a million different video games for like, this guy got dropped into this environment and he's cut off from backup and he's got to figure it out. There's a zillion reasons to tell that story. popular film has been doing it over and over again for decades at this point. So have video games. So, you know, I don't think it would be the most innovative thing on the planet, but I could see another Ghost Recon game in that mold being fun. But also, I don't really get the impression that Wildlands or, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't get the impression that Wildlands or Breakpoint were particularly successful video games. Like, not to say that they bombed and didn't sell at all, but like they were, I don't remember them being like smash hit, like, hooray, this is our earnings are up because we sold way more copies of the John Bernthal game or whatever. And with Breakpoint, you know, they eventually kind of turned that into a weird test bed where they were like, fuck it, what if we did NFT helmets? And like they did a bunch of dumb shit with that game. Whereas Breakpoint, it was more like, what if we took out the gear score? What if we did this? What if we did this? Like there was a little bit more scramble around Breakpoint in a way that makes you think that it maybe didn't hit. But yeah, I don't know. What do you do with Ghost Recon in this day and age? I think the days of, you know, traditional Rainbow Six as a tactical game are long gone. I think the early days of Ghost Recon are long gone as well. I don't think you can go home again on that style of game at that scale, at the scope and the budget that Ubisoft tends to put towards their video games. I don't think that we end up getting, you know, a pure single player campaign and then also a multiplayer mode. But man, Graw was great. That first Graw was a hell of a game. It looked great at the time too, like for, you know, like being early in a console generation and all of that stuff. Like it was one of those early highlights of just like, man, these actually are good looking video games these days. God damn. Yeah. Let's move on. Hickey from Sydney, or a tie from, wait, what am I getting wrong here? Just says cheers from Sydney, Australia. Like, all right, okay. Loved the interview with Jason Blundell. I'd love to hear more interviews with folks from the PAL region, mostly because I got a kick out of hearing Mega Drive as opposed to Genesis. Given Sega's cool dude, rude attitude marketing of the 90s, why did the Genesis name ever get used at all? Mega Drive seems like a far more on-brand name when comparing the two. Was it just a simple case of different names testing better in different regions? I don't know. Mega Drive is an awesome name, but also maybe it was less awesome in the early 90s. Maybe it just didn't stand out as much. Drive could have been a, you know, something that would make people think of a computer. Was there a trademark stuff involved around that maybe prevented them from doing it? That I think that may have been part of it. But Genesis, you know, like Sega needed a reset after the relative failure of the Master System, and the Master System kind of failing to make a dent in this market. I think there was a certain aspect of them where they were starting over and they're like, this is it, we're planting our flag, this is the beginning, this is Genesis. And I could very easily see marketing dudes in suits thinking that the name Genesis was hell of edgy, if that makes sense. The other thing to remember is that the early days of Genesis were not especially, as you put it, cool dude, rude attitude marketing. They found their way into the, like, you know, Genesis does or Sega does what Nintendo don't. Like they got there pretty quickly, but like the early days of Genesis, when they would have been naming the system, they weren't really there yet. The Attitude Era of video game marketing had not begun. It really would be kind of even post Sonic the Hedgehog 1 when they kind of started really tapping into that mentality. But like the even the Genesis does what Nintendo don't, being relatively early. It was not full bore. It was not like kid with his hair all crazy yelling Sega into the camera. The stuff that you would get further into the 90s. Like all of the Sega CD marketing is really dumb. Like when you go back and watch it now. Because it's all the way down the road on that stuff in a way that you just go like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And on top of that, they're marketing the fucking Sega CD. One of the greatest, but also worst device add-ons in the history of the world. I love the Sega CD, but let's not be crazy. It's foolish. And trying to market it as like the CDs in the future, which is sure, yeah, they were not wrong. They were not wrong, but yeah, the early days of Genesis were very different from the marketing campaigns they would run just a few short years later. They tried to be confrontational, but they were, confrontational in a, let's say, a slightly more respectful way with the Genesis, the Genesis does what Nintendo don't stuff. I always thought that Nintendo should have slapped back because Nintendo eventually got to the point where they're doing like the Play It Loud campaign, and that shit was just embarrassing. Like the late era SNES stuff where they were trying to say like, no, we're the real deal here, but like they were even more like dad coded than any of Sega's executives were. And so you got all this like dumb Play It Loud, like rock guitar stuff that felt like them grasping at straws when they should have just said Nintendo is what Genesis isn't and gone with that. They should have just fucking taken it to them directly and said, they could, Nintendo could have just run a marketing campaign that said, here's the Super Nintendo. You can't play Green Dog on it. Shakan the Forever Man will never appear on this console. And you'd be like, I got to get one of those. Sell me one of those, man. Sell me whatever that is. Because Jesus Christ. Keep me away from Green Dog. Alma here in the chat says, was the Attitude Era in game marketing a thing in Japan as well? No, and this was, I think, a lot of the, or one of the factors that led to a clash between Tom Kalinske at Sega of America and the home, and the mothership at Sega of Japan was that they were not really into that. That attitudinal presentation was not really, like Japanese business did not function that way. And so I think that there were factions within Sega of Japan that really wanted Tom Kalinske to fuck up so they could get him out of there. And so as soon as things weren't working quite as well as it initially seemed, a problem that was exacerbated by Sega of Japan's short-sightedness in some ways, they made it very difficult for him to function. They counteracted him at every turn. And, if you're supposed to be leading an organization and you've been leading an organization and then suddenly they come in and say, no, we're calling the shots now. What do? You fucking leave. You fucking go, well, fuck off. Fuck the fuck off. Why would I stay here and take your shit? Because, the brain trust that gave us the fucking Master System. That's what you, okay, all right, sure. Good luck. You're going to launch the 32X and then the Saturn? This is not going to work. You're going to do it anyway? Great. I got to get out of here. Like, yeah, man. Not to say that everything that Sega of Japan did was bad, and certainly not to say that everything that Sega of America did was good, because it was not. But in the confines of where they were all at and the previous work they had done and all of that, like they really, the infighting is what fucked up Nintendo didn't have to fucking bump Sega off back then. Sega did it to themselves. Alex in Halifax writes in and asks, are all games for babies scams? Most of them. I recently speed ran a month of PC Game Pass and noticed that games for kids are hit and miss, but games meant for babies suck. The Peppa Pig, Bluey, and Mighty Pups games were about 2 hours of barely interactive gameplay with £35 asking prices. I don't think it's good both culturally or business-wise to have low standards for media meant for young eyes. Bluey was especially disappointing because the show is surprisingly good, but the game is a cash grab. I don't know if you have more insight into why this is beyond the obvious, but as a father to young kids, I figure you might appreciate an opportunity. I would say that the Bluey game is head and shoulders above that other shit, and I think the Peppa Pig game at least has a lot of fun little interactions. The Peppa Pig game on a like mainline, like finish it, get all the trophies, get all the achievements thing. Yeah, there's not a lot to it. But in terms of like, oh, if I hit this button, I can jump rope for a while. Like, you know, it's not the deepest game in the world, but you could do a lot worse. And how do I know that? Because those Paw Patrol games exist, because that PJ Masks game exists. It's those games are truly dreadful. They are dog shit platformers. It's really abysmal, man. That stuff is really fucking terrible. To the point where, like, when we started playing the Bluey game the other day, I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. This game's so fucking good. Because the bar is so low when it comes to that stuff. I tend to agree that, like, kids deserve good games. They deserve it more than we do in a lot of cases, right? I think that the way that kids games get phoned in, and traditionally this is the experience, right, is that a ton of games for children just get like phoned in because they go like, oh, well, we're not going to put any money into this. Nah, kids are dumb anyway. And so there's like, we're not going to put anything complicated in here or whatever. Like, there's no skill required once you've gotten to a point where you're comfortable holding a controller, I should say. And so my kids are at a point, they're young enough to where they don't quite have that end of it down yet. And so, but that means all of the challenge comes from a very frustrating place. It comes from a place of like, oh, you put double jumps into the Paw Patrol game. Like, now you're expecting a kid to learn, like, okay, I need to hit jump and then hit jump again. Like, their motor skills are coming along just fine, but it's not something that it makes a lot of conceptual sense either. And so what do you do to, like, so, when you've got kids who are having trouble jumping up to another platform because they don't think to jump and push right at the same time, to then also say, and you got a double jump, can be a deal breaker for some young children when it comes to like mastery of the controls. And so I think that's a weird thing that the Paw Patrol game specifically does. But it's good in other ways. Like, it feels like more of an oversight where, like, hey, there are spots where you have to stop and a bunch of icons for super abilities appear on the screen with a button prompt next to them, and you look at that and figure out like, which one is going to help me here. Okay, that rocket looks like it's going up, so I need to hit the square button. Like, there's weird shape and letter recognition that at a very young age, at a very, very, at a young age where these kids probably shouldn't quite be playing games at all yet. Maybe that's not the case, but it's like, okay, I need to hit the square button. Okay, here's the square button. And starting to get better with that stuff, I think, is kind of cool. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's kids games are really hard. I think because some of these properties appeal to such a wider a wider range of ages, and the age range at that young age is the leaps, the cognitive and motor skill leaps and everything that those kids make over the first 3 years of their lives are gargantuan. And so you might have a kid that can't play a game at all that then 6 months later has it all down pat, and they can do it all and everything. Like everything just kind of clicks into place at a point, and they, are understanding that stuff on a deeper level. And I think that that's really interesting. But it also makes it really hard, I'm sure, as a game developer to target a thing that like, this is for ages 3 to 5. I don't know what age range they really try to put these things, put on these things. But yeah, I do think the kids deserve better than what they're getting. But I think it's really hard to. I bet it's really hard to make a great kids game. You really just kind of want to make a toy. I mean, it's why the Double Fine Connect thing, is effective, is because it's way more toy like. Yeah, something like a goat simulator where you can just kind of like walk around and have things happen. I think I was telling my daughter about it, and she seemed to really enjoy hearing about it, but it's been about a week and she hasn't asked about it at all. But I was thinking about trying to have my daughter play some Katamari Damacy. And see how she does with tank controls, which seems like a sort of a weird, conceptually strange thing to teach, but I think beyond the tank controls, I think that would actually, because you have a bunch of like novel and funny interactions and all of that sort of stuff that I think would really go a long way with kids. And I think that that's kind of what you're looking for, is just, almost like the interactive video game equivalent of like an activity board, or, like, hey, it's a little farm thing. And when I push this button, it makes a moo noise. And when I push this button, it plays Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And, like you want just like, I want a thing that I can poke at and have funny stuff come out the other end that will, have some slight challenge at times, but not necessarily a platformer, like walk around and do this. And so the Bluey game kind of is that in some ways. It's just not enough of it, and the interactions are not novel enough, and they are not funny or fun enough. It's like, oh, you found another sticker, congratulations. One of the nice things about all of these games is that all of them are on, I believe all of them are on both Game Pass and the PlayStation, like the higher tier PlayStation Network subscriptions. So like, yeah, like buying these games for £35 or, $40 or whatever they end up going for here is stupid. But like as something that I'm already subscribed to, and the kids are like, I want to play something new. And I'm like, shit, what do I even have? We already played hours of Strawberry Shortcake for the Atari 2600. I don't think that's going to be any better. Like you got to kind of find something else. My son played some of the Magic School Bus game for the Genesis because he is a fan of Magic School Bus. And he didn't much care for it. He had me play most of it. That's the other thing, is like my son especially, he'll say, I want to play a video game. And I'm like, no, okay, all right. And then I'll put on PJ Masks, or, it's been the Bluey game lately, but whatever. And then we'll turn it all on, and I'll hand him the controller. He'll pick a level and then just hand the controller back to me because he just wants to watch me play it. And I'm just like, what kind of lunatic would want to watch me play video games? This is stupid. Who would do this? And so I've played quite a bit of I've played quite a bit of the friggin' PJ Masks game. It's not good. It's not good. But at least I'm getting some trophies along the way. Gonna get all the achievements in. We got all the costumes in the Bluey game. I just got to play like 3 more games of Keepy Uppy to get that achievement. and like a few other things and find the last stickers or whatever, and then we'll be done with that. But yeah, I don't know. The Bluey game, again, it's a low bar, but I think the Bluey game is actually pretty good by comparison. So, take that for what it's worth. Kevin in California writes in and says, expanding on last week's Pac-Man discussion, I'm curious as to your thoughts about Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. What are your thoughts on this game? Was there ever a weirder sequel to a video game? I don't think Yoshi's Island needs to be in discussion, as it's more of a prequel, even if you would consider it related to Super Mario World, right? I mean, it says Super Mario World 2 right on it, so it's, like by definition, not a prequel, even if it is Baby Mario in there. I think it's very funny that they named a game Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, after making Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man and Super Pac-Man and Professor Pac-Man and Baby Pac-Man and Pac-Mania and Pac and Pal, and then Pac-Land, the other platformer based on the cartoon, and then eventually Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, if you're unaware of it, it is a frickin' platformer, but also kind of a point and click. It's also kind of an adventure game. The development of Pac-Man 2, it's very funny for them after all these years to call it Pac-Man 2. In Japan, it was known as Hello Pac-Man, so they didn't even call it Pac-Man 2 in Japan. So it was like the US marketing team or whatever that came up with the idea to call it Pac-Man 2, which is even funnier. I think hello with an exclamation point, hello Pac-Man, I think is a way cooler name. But yeah, yes, it's very funny that they decided to call it Pac-Man 2. The sequel to Pac-Man. Imagine a world where you went from playing Pac-Man and then you played Pac-Man 2 and that was it. You're like, what the fuck? I mean, even playing all the games that came between those two games is still super weird. But I think it gets to like a lot of this digs at some of the challenges that Namco has had when it comes to figuring out what to do with Pac-Man next. Like, what can Pac-Man do? Like, he made this maze game. We did this maze game. It was very popular. We made a lot of other ones. And so we made a lot of other ones. But what do we do now? And that they decided like, hey man, we're gonna make we'll make a platform. I mean, Mario's big, right? Pac-Man was Mario before Mario was Mario by a couple of years here. So what the fuck, man? Like, what Pac-Man can walk around too, or whatever the logic was, led to that. But I think a lot of it gets down to like, and then you get to the PlayStation, and we get to something like Pac-Man World, which is fucking terrible. And so this idea of like, hey, we got to this kind of 3D platformer territory and made some of this other, hot games like Croc came along. And now what can we make Pac-Man into a Croc-like? Can we do a Croc-like? Did we do a Mario, like whatever they did when they came up with Pac-Man World? Pac-Man World is abysmal. They re-released it like that. That is the only game, I said it a couple of weeks ago, but that is the only game I've uninstalled from a console specifically so that my kids stop seeing it and saying, ooh, let's play Pac-Man, because they make me play it because it is too complicated for them. And having played a bunch of Pac-Man World, it's fucking shit. It's a fucking terrible platformer. It's the type of platformer that could have only existed on the PlayStation 1 at a time when those things were still being codified a little bit, right? Like Mario 64 comes along and it's like this big expansive world, and you get Pac-Man world, and it's like, it's kind of a side scroller, but it's polygonal and it's really fucking slow, and the level layout is fucking terrible, and the collectibles are built, like the level layout is done in such a way that the collectibles are weirdly missable in a way that it shouldn't be. And like there's a lot of backtracking to get all of the stuff, and so you're going through these incredibly boring levels and then backtracking your way through these incredibly boring levels, so you have to see even more of these incredibly boring levels. It's terrible. It's a bad fucking game, dude. So yeah, but I do think that, you know, there's clearly, you know, they were saddled with one of the, it's a curse in a weird way. They had one of the most popular video game characters of all time, Pac-Man. But what the fuck do you do with it? And we saw other attempts of, like, you know, kind of like golden age, early age arcade game characters and trying to bring them forward. We saw a lot of that with Frogger, where like Hasbro or Atari or Infogrames or, you know, whatever mix of the owners of that stuff kept making these fucking Frogger games, dude. And turning Frogger into like, well, you still hop around, but what if it's more like a maze, or what if it's more like a, you know, you're solving puzzles and we're doing this? Like, those Frogger games were awful. And also weirdly popular in a way that was like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? And so, you know, Pac-Man, with Pac-Man, I think they eventually hit upon some interesting ideas, you know, in terms of reinventing original Pac-Man in some ways, but also coming up with new you know, you have something like a Pac-Man 256. You know, kind of finding ways to make a modern mobile game with Pac-Man style mechanics, and that works really, really well. But you also have something like, obviously, like Pac-Man Championship Edition and CEDX and that stuff, where they find ways to really brighten up and modernize the original concepts of Pac-Man in really exciting and fun ways. And I think that should have been a gold standard of sorts. Like, you look at that and go like, okay, let's do more of, like, you could do this with a lot of different old arcade games. But then they did like Galaga Legions and Legions DX, and that game's not great. Like, they tried to do the Pac-Man Championship Edition thing with Galaga and missed the mark wildly. And so, you know, it's not as easy as just like, hey, we'll figure out a way to, you know, like, you can't do it with everything. I think some games it would work, some games it wouldn't. You could do like a modern Mr. Do, probably, where you just figure out a way to, like, I'm dropping an apple on 1,000 of these monsters at the same time, and whatever. Like, you could probably do something with that. You could probably do a good Frogger, I think, if you sat down and thought about it. I think Q*bert, you could probably make a Q*bert Championship Edition that would be pretty neat. But I think that some of those games are a little rough to return to, and modernizing them is kind of tricky. So yeah, I don't know, man. Pac-Man 2 is just such a strange thing, and that's kind of the cool thing about it, but not that cool. Not as cool as some people. It's very interesting, but I would not call it good. Max writes in, wanting my opinion. I'm not even going to say the name of this thing. It's a company. I found their website. It says, I was at a Comic-Con and they had a booth showing their big collection of console games from Atari up to PS2 and the like for $700. It's a company selling emulator boxes. preloaded with games. $700. I was going to splurge for my birthday when I officially become an old man, but wanted a professional opinion if these are worth it for that kind of money. No. The thing they are selling you is like a fucking $50 Raspberry Pi 4 with a hard drive hooked up to it. And they are preloading it with games illegally. That if you could just go download those games. You could find them on the internet. It's the internet. Do not pay these people $700 for a Raspberry Pi with a 2 terabyte hard drive hooked up to it and like 2 fucking bootleg Xbox 360 controllers. Do not do it. A Raspberry Pi costs like nothing compared to these prices. You will have to learn some things about how to configure it and where to put the files or what have you. You will have to acquire the files, which is not very difficult. But if you don't know, then it's a process to find it. But none of this is challenging, and none of this is worth. You should not pay anyone $700 for any kind of preloaded emulator anything. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to want to update it over time. You're going to want to, like these things get updated and they'll support, like more arcade games or whatever. And you'll go, oh man, I wish I could update this. And you won't know how because you bought it preloaded. Or it will eventually break somehow for some reason. And you will go, oh shit. You are better off just figuring out, like there are plenty of YouTube tutorials about how to set up, I don't know, Laka? What do you want to use? There's a huge variety of like emulator focused OS installs. Or like Roxbox or what, anyway, there's a handful of different things that some of which come with a variety of launchers, pre-installed emulator station or whatever, that you could follow these tutorials and kind of mess with the file system yourself to a very small degree and do exactly what these people are doing. These people are rip-off artists. And they're fucking up emulation. Honestly, when people sell emulators packaged with games, which a lot of people are doing now, like it's in some ways more brazen than it's ever been. But when they're doing this shit, they are establishing in people's minds that the emulators are just as illegal as the games, which is not the case. And so, like this stuff has, I think, a harmful effect overall to emulation in general. So you shouldn't. Nothing they're selling is worth $700. Nothing about the device they're selling you is worth $700. It's a freaking Raspberry Pi. It's literally like a Pi 4 that they're either putting an SD card in or hooking a hard drive up to, depending on which tier of unit you buy from them. It is not worth it. Those things have USB ports on them. You can plug any controller you want into it, and it will, with some exception, the emulators will recognize it and work depending on what you're doing. There's no reason to pay people that kind of money for these things. It's a super, super ripoff. Here's an email from Jedi Mass 4. There's been a lot of questions about the future of Super Smash Brothers and what it will be after Ultimate. Sakurai has talked numerous times about how Ultimate is the culmination of his work on Smash. And with all the numerous guest characters and giant roster of however many characters, Sakurai does not think they can do something like that again. Some folks think it's time for Smash to get a reboot that completely changes the feel. Some think they should try to top Ultimate. Many think that the Smash Brothers game on Switch 2 should just be a re-release of Ultimate. No one knows what the future of Smash will be, other than that it has a future because it's too big and popular to stay on the sidelines. What do you think Nintendo will do with Smash Brothers for the next generation? Yeah, it's a lot of characters. That's too many characters. I don't think that them making another one and adding another 20 characters to it or whatever is the right move. Though if they did that in the if they did that in the context of re-releasing Ultimate, sort of like they did with Mario Kart 8, then I could see it. I could see it because you're not going to touch that base of existing characters other than maybe some more balance passes as you go through the course of this game. But if they were to make a whole new game, I don't think they could get away with having the roster be this large because I think that's just really challenging. There's some licensing stuff they would have to do again, which, you know, the work's already done once. So maybe that's not impossible. But I think that, you know, why? Why do it? Why make an all-new Smash Brothers game that has the same massive roster as the last one when you could just re-release Ultimate with another season of DLC or another, 3 seasons, whatever. Do the Mario Kart 8 thing that they did on Switch and support that for years. So I think you have 2 options really. I think the options are you are re-releasing Ultimate and, continuing to update it, or you are rebooting it. And you are then going with a much smaller roster, and you're deciding, like, are we rebooting it and keeping the same feel but just going down to 12 characters because Jesus Christ, we just can't maintain this huge of a roster in this game anymore. It doesn't make sense to do it. Speaking as someone who does not especially like, I'm not married to the way that any of those games have felt. I think a reboot that drastically changed what those games were, I would be open to it. But at some point, you're not making Smash Brothers anymore. I mean, it'd be cool if they made a one-on-one, if they made a proper fighting game with these characters, that would be kind of awesome. But, that ship sailed. So yeah, I don't know what the right answer is here, but I suspect the thing that probably makes the most sense is to issue an update to Ultimate, resell it as Ultimate Deluxe, or whatever. Throw some Capcom word on the end of it, Turbo, Champion, whatever. And keep that same roster and add another 20 over time. 4 at launch and then 3 more DLC passes or whatever. And some new stages, some new music, and stuff that's not currently in the game. I think they could get away with that. And that would give them an opportunity to maybe, if they could revisit some of the stuff under the hood and go like, okay, the power of the Switch 2 allows us to, like, if they're breaking from old Smash Brothers the same way that Mario Kart Deluxe did from regular 8, that would give them an opportunity to have like better netcode for a change. That might be fun. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think that, I personally, I would love to see them do something way more dramatic, and reboot it. What if they made a tag game? What if they made it? What if they did their? What if this was their Double Dash moment, and you just picked 2 characters, and you could just swap them, tag in and out, and still make it a 4-player game for people who want that, and go that way with it. But like, you know, yeah, what if they did a tag game? You know, you got a huge roster at your disposal. It would give you an opportunity to come up with fun new like tag smashes for characters or whatever. It would be like fun to see all of those animations. Tag final smashes, you know, I don't know, what would you even call those? Final tag smash. Anyway. Yeah, tag, make it a tag game. Fuck it. That's my only idea, is keep the roster, add more characters, and make it a tag game. And make it so the characters trip 10 times as much. I don't know, fuck it. Give everyone sex kicks. No. Or reboot it and have like 8 characters in it and have it feel dramatically different. But I don't think that's what players want. I don't think the fan base is sometimes sometimes I'm just a real asshole. I don't think the fan base is sophisticated enough to enjoy a full reboot of Smash Brothers that felt dramatically different from the previous games. I don't think they would go for it. I don't think they would be willing to accept it. I think they'd be like, that's not my Smash. And so that's probably a hard one to, you know, if you care about those people, which, you know, that's a subset of a subset, right? Like they're the loudest subset, but like for what that game sells, like it's not, you know, it's not just human beings you would like to throw like fish or sea aquatic life at, I guess. It's a wider fan. It's more than just those people. Joey from Canada says, what do you think will come first? Decompiled Lost Odyssey from the Xbox 360, or it being properly ported to PC via backwards compatibility, or just on the store? I don't think it's fun to see. It's fun to. It'll be decompiled. They're not gonna resell Lost Odyssey. It's fun to watch people try to hold the torch for Lost Odyssey as if it's going to come back in some meaningful way. But probably not. Someone's probably already figuring out how to decompile it and how well those tools work and whatever else, and figuring out how it all goes. And that's going to do it. Thanks everybody for writing in. Let's see here. David writes in, have you managed to avoid exposing your kids to Mario Party so far? I had a real scary moment where a popular Twitch streamer was playing Mario Kart on his Twitch channel, and I had that up in a window here after doing a stream, after a podcast or whatever, and they came in and they saw Mario and Princess Peach and the characters they know and love on the screen, and they went like, well, what is this? My daughter was like, what is it? Is this a game? What is this? Can I play? Like, no, this is just a video. It's not, you can't play it. It's not a, no, this is nothing. Just tab over to a different window and go do something else. So yeah, that's going to do it for me here. Have a great rest of your week. I will be back on Friday. I will not be here on Wednesday. It is spring break, and so we're going to take a little trip, and we'll see how that goes. This is going to be the first hotel trip that we've taken with the family, And we'll see if everyone sleeps or not. Whatever, they don't sleep here. I got 2 hours of sleep last night. It was a fucking disaster. So whatever. So yes, I'll be out for a couple of days here, but I'll be back by Friday to rank some 8-bit Nintendo games. So come on through, and we'll rank some games. We have some on the list for what was it? We have a few on the list already for this week that were leftovers from last week, such as The Terminator, Shadowgate, and Swordmaster. We'll probably play at least some of those games this Friday, so come on through and check those out. Of course, if you want an ad-free version of the show, patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann is the place. Head on over there, and you can get it, along with a bunch of other stuff. And yes, I will be back on Friday. Have a good one. Until then, I'll see you. Bye.